Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfropedia.com.
You began posting on counter-racism.com, their work-study program, I guess the latter part of last spring, Mayish. Can you kind of share with our listeners what was going on around that time that brought you to counter racism with a problem?
The department I was working at the time, I was just having a really bad experience with, it was probably about 5 or 6 people in that department that didn't immediately, when I first started working there, they didn't speak to me at all, and they made it very, very difficult for me from day one, and I personally don't think I did anything, to create that scenario in the first place. There were situations where they wouldn't help me with my job. They were supposed to be training me. They wouldn't give me the information that I needed to do my job. It was always sort of giving you half the information, and then when I inevitably got things wrong, they then would sort of openly criticise what I did. They would bring it up in meetings, just sort of generally doing things to undermine me from the beginning. I don't know whether I sort of dealt with it in the right way, because I think initially I got quite angry about it because I didn't understand what was happening, and I didn't agree with what they were doing, and I kind of reacted by not speaking and being sulking, just generally sort of, I suppose I just wasn't handling it in the right way. Later on, I then went to speak to my manager because things had got quite bad. She actually told me in the first meeting I had with her when I first raised these concerns, she actually said to me that she'd noticed it herself, and the senior manager had also noticed it, that there was a very sort of hostile environment towards me. And they said that they didn't say anything to begin with because they felt that it might just be the dynamics and things were settled down, and they didn't want to create a scenario where there might have been a backlash. So that was their excuse why they didn't do anything about it. They didn't intervene. She then told me to keep a note of when any of this happened, raise it with her, send her an email, ask for a meeting, and then explain if anything had happened. I basically was doing this on a regular basis. It became, at one point, it was almost every week I was in her office saying, this has happened, this person, I was receiving silent calls to my phone. I knew it was somebody in the office doing it because you would hear the person, and I knew exactly who it was, the person laugh, my phone would go, I'd pick it up, then they would hang up, then I could hear laughing again. Yeah, and that was happening on the days because I shared an office with 2 other people, and it would always happen on the days that those people weren't in the office. So it was really obvious and it would have been obvious to my manager that it was somebody internally doing it, somebody in the department, but I raised it with her. She said that she didn't know whether it was somebody in the office, and she basically tried to get me. She was saying, you need to phone reception, and she was basically trying to palm it off on me and saying I needed to sort it out. There were other situations where I would come into work and things would be missing. Food. It's just, some of these things just sound ridiculous, but it was a constant drip of this like poisonous behaviour. It was really, when I look back on it now, I actually can't believe that I stayed there as long as I did, because it was really, really awful. Yeah, like I said, there's been stolen. People talking, I would enter the office, they would stop talking. There's so many things I can't, oh God, mine's gone blank. On one occasion, I spoke to my manager and she said that because it had been going on for quite a while at the time, that she would have a word with the people that were, she felt were instigating it. And like I said, she said she'd noticed it herself. She subsequently had a meeting with them. And then one of them did actually come and apologise to me, because she knew, she were, required to march, she knew what she was doing, and she knew that, because I suppose in the meeting my manager would have pointed out to her that she'd noticed it. Things improved for a couple of weeks, and then at one stage they were actually tampering with the work that I was doing. So I would be putting something on the system, then I'd go back in and it wasn't there. It was, they were taking quite a lot of chances really, but I suppose they knew that they could do all of this and get away with it, because the managers up until that point, and this was months after this was happening, the managers didn't really intervene apart from that time when she called them in and had a word with them. But she didn't take any corrective action. She didn't warn them or say, even though she herself admitted that she'd noticed it.
Wow.
And then on another occasion, the senior manager came back from holiday. She had these chocolates. One of the chocolates in the box was called Negro. They were Spanish. She had holidays in Spain. She got these chocolates, and one of the girls who'd been hostile towards me, who'd been, doing all these things, came to the office and said, "Do you think this chocolate is a racist?" Like, what are you talking about? And I said, Negro is a racist slur. Yeah, so I don't know, what do you mean? I don't understand what you mean. Do I think that's a racist term? It's not acceptable. As far as I know, you're not allowed to use that within the workplace or anywhere else. She continued to repeat it and say, well, Negro, it means black, doesn't it? That's not racist. And then she just continued to say, I said, look, can you just stop saying this to me, because I don't come to work to listen to people, talking about whether a chocolate's Negro or not. I don't, this is ridiculous. I asked her to stop using the word. She continued to use it. Both managers were in their office. They overheard everything, and they ignored it. My reaction, I then faced more, retaliation, because I reacted the way that I did. Other people got involved because they didn't agree with the fact that I reacted in that way. And the people that I shared the office with began to ignore me, speak to each other, say things, openly be hostile towards me, say, I could actually see that they were basically, I can't think of the word, they were basically making fun of me, I suppose. That sounds a bit childish, but they were kind of doing that so that I could see. They weren't hiding what they were doing, so that continued and got worse, and it got to the point that in the end my manager actually began participating in what they were doing. She encouraged what they were doing towards the end, because obviously at that stage, she didn't want me there because she knew that I was beginning to assert myself and actually, try to stop what was happening. Whilst I was ignoring it and going along with what she wanted me to do, which was basically, don't react, don't retaliate. If they say something to you, don't come and tell me. I'd go and tell her she wouldn't do anything. Whilst I was doing that was okay. But as soon as I started saying, look, come on, I'm not going to put up with this. I asked to see her and said, this has got to stop. This shouldn't be happening. You need to do something about it. And as soon as I changed my approach to what was happening, she then started to become involved in the mistreatment and I think actually encouraged them to do it.
Wow. And
then that was the point that I then sent the message to Mr. Williams asking if there was he could offer me any advice about how to go about dealing with it.
Wow.
Context of White Supremacy, Gus T Renegade, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, September 22nd, 2016. So I have been told this is our weekly broadcast on workplace racism. I will state again, I'll probably say this a few times, this program is not for spectators. This is not a broadcast to put your feet up, have your herbal tea, relax, and listen to the entertaining, sometimes sad, sometimes humorous, interesting reports from different non-white people in their respective areas of employment. That is not what this is designed for. This broadcast is designed for non-white people, victims of racism, to dial in, to share reports, observations, experience, things that have happened to you directly or things that you have observed on the job, problems. It can be violations of rules, discrepancies in terms of how you are treated in comparison to other employees on the job, discrepancies in how non-white people in general, doesn't have to necessarily be you, but discrepancies in how non-white people are treated on the job in comparison to how white people are treated. If you are having problems, any sort of abuse, targeting, if they're saying things or doing things to you, and you would like to share, if you are interested in getting suggestions on how to solve those problems, certainly dial in. If you have figured out some things, some strategies, techniques, things to say, things to do to stop, neutralize racist attacks on the job, and or if it's problems, conflict with non-white people, because I know a lot of people are in that situation as well. If you have difficulty with other black employees on the job and you figured out some things that work well to neutralize, minimize some of those problems, certainly dial in. The number is 641-715-3640. The code is 56#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. The number again, 641-715-3640. The code is 564943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. Certainly, if we have folks who are self-employed, as they call it, entrepreneurs, dial in. We had one last week. Definitely, I think it's important to share those experiences. I think a lot of people at least submit that if more black people open their own businesses, that would eliminate racism, white supremacy in the workforce. That is astronomically incorrect thinking. It's simply not logical. We had someone dialed in last week to further evidence that simply ain't so. But if we have folks who are self-employed, that would be great as well to get a different perspective on all the different aspects, ways that you are going to have to deal with racism, white supremacy in the area of labor. With that, I will try to share a few anecdotes that people have written in as we go. If you want to write in, I know we have some people, they are not able to participate live during the broadcast. You can feel free to drop an email untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com. I will check my email as we go, and I will be more than happy to read your commentary, observation, reports to our listeners if you want to get some feedback from them, or just to share some of the things that you have seen. But I'll be more than happy to read what you have written in. Before I get to some of the reports, the audio segment that you heard at the beginning of the program, that was Dark Matter. She was on the program way back in 2010. We had her on the broadcast in the springtime. She shared about her situation. She is in England, dealing with white supremacy, global system. I think for anyone who has listened to our discussions on workplace racism before or heard the hostility, unprovoked hostility, not being given pertinent information so that you can do your job efficiently. That comes up almost on a weekly basis, not being trained adequately, where you're being harassed and targeted by employees, and no one is willing to do the correct thing to stop this subversive, unjust behavior. The stealing of items, whether it's just little knickknacks or small things that you have on your desk area, the harassing phone calls, just a lot of the same antics, trifling racist behavior that we hear on a weekly basis from folks. I think that sort of thing is important just because it shows this is global. It doesn't matter where you happen to be at. If you're in Florida, if you're in Kansas, if you're in Maine, if you're in California, if you're in London, if you're in South Africa, you're going to be running into the same types of antics on the job. I think that's important for so many reasons. Really, at the core, I think a lot of that, it reveals what it means to be a member of the global white minority worldwide. I think it makes it crystal. That is in the archive. You can go back and check out that program in its entirety. As you heard, she did contact Mr. Edward Williams to get some help on things to say, things to do, to try to neutralize the racist behavior that was happening to her on the job. Moving forward, one news report from this week, someone shared on my Facebook page. This is in Ohio. Lots of things have been happening in Ohio. Tyree King, the young 13-year-old black child that was shot and killed last week with a toy gun, and some of the other instances as well. This is a black teen who was told to go home after wearing a Colin Kaepernick jersey to work. This is Mr. Kaepernick is the NFL quarterback for the 49ers who's been protesting the national anthem because of racism, white supremacy. It's been causing a big stir for the last month or more. The report reads, a 16-year-old Kroger, it's a grocery store on the East Coast primarily, a 16-year-old Kroger employee was sent home for wearing a controversial player's jersey to work. According to WHIO, employees at a Springfield Kroger are allowed to wear NFL jerseys every Sunday during football season. On September, Colin Kaepernick jersey to work, but was sent home after a customer complained to management. Kaepernick is the player who recently sparked controversy because he decided to kneel during the Star-Spangled Banner. The decision to send Scott home caused a backlash on Instagram. Kroger officials released a statement apologizing for the incident. We are proud and privileged to employ a workforce and to serve a customer base as diverse as America, said Patsy Leisman, a Kroger spokeswoman, in a statement. We are aware of the situation and have apologized to Elijah and his mother. Diversity, inclusion, and respect are among our company's core values and ones we strive to live up to every day. They said Scott could wear the jersey to work in the future. End of statement. I'd be curious if they compensated him for lost wages since he was sent home that day, and whatever compensation he would have missed out on as a result of not being allowed to work his full schedule, or if they did anything to compensate other than just an apology to make that situation right. I'd be curious about that as well. But anywho, I think that's just significant, just we talked about before, anytime they have incidents like this that become a big deal, that force a lot of people to talk about, pay attention to racism, white supremacy, the presidential election, some of these police shootings, the situation with Colin Kaepernick, that can come up on the job in a variety of ways to kind of be prepared for that, particularly if you have a business where you have patrons that are coming in, where they might be, making comments and what have you, and, they want to try to influence what's happening in the workplace, that can be a big problem. It is definitely something to think about, particularly even in workplaces. I know we've had people before who've talked about, they like wearing clothing to make a statement on the job, if it's a, Colin Kaepernick jersey or a Nat Turner shirt, that sort of thing. And I've said before, racists, they notice that sort of thing, and they can make more problems for you. I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying be cognizant. Number one, if you're going to wear whatever you're going to wear to work, am I wearing this to solve problems? Why am I doing this? And is this going to cause more problems for me? That's just something to consider. Opinion that under the system of white supremacy, we have enough problems already. Right on. Moving forward, a person wrote in to share. Hi, Gus. My name is Jack, not real name, from Atlanta, 25-year-old student. I'm relatively new to the cows, about 8 months, and it's anyway. However, I work at a predominantly white Jewish institution where whites make up about 95% of the staff and patrons. I have so many stories about white terroristic behavior here at my workplace that I can send emails to you for hours. In this email, I'll focus on one particular instance. I work in the fitness aquatics department, and frequently guests will come to ask questions or just to have regular conversation. This one white gentleman who I met is a rich retired accountant, and he often unveils financial tips, which is something that I often study. He revealed he was a multi-millionaire, and I began asking questions to learn as much as possible about finances. Eventually, we developed this advisor-advisee relationship, and we would talk often about the stock market and finance-related topics. He asked me for my email so that he could send me a financial report that supposedly had some constructive information, and I obliged. He did indeed send me some useful information over about a 1-month period. One day at work, he comes into the facility and pulls me aside and says he wants to ask me something. I walk over and he asks me, "Do you have a girlfriend?" I felt this was going to get to Area 8 somehow. I'm reading this for the first time with you all, so I'll be surprised with you and seeing what happens. I answered no, and I said, "Why?" I answered no, and I said, "Why?" He replied, "Because I saw your profile picture for your email and saw that you were with a girl in the photo." I said, "Oh yes, that's my sister in the picture." He then went further. "Okay, I also saw that you had a Google Plus account. I saw that you were posting something about Black Lives Matter or something like that." I responded, "Okay, I know what you're referring to. What about it?" He said that it probably wasn't a good idea to might find out this information and may not like the content. The post that he was referring to was a post I made in 2014, right around the time of the Ferguson riots, in which I used the hashtag Black Life. He interpreted it as a Black Lives Matter post. Now, mind you, I have posts of all sorts, mostly pertaining to boxing, former boxer, and non-racial content, which means that for him to find that post, he went through my entire timeline to find it and probably spent a great deal of time researching me. He doesn't talk with me as much since then. I have so many more stories that I had began jotting them down for record's sake. I'll do my best to send you weekly updates about my work situation, and hopefully I'll be able to call in live. That is end of transmission. I think that's something we stated regularly on the program about social media in this age, and just that, racists, they snoop big time, and they spend a lot of their time and energy snooping on other black people. Yes, they snoop around on other whites too, but I mean, hey, their primary activity is, what are their niggers up to? Are they catching on? Are they doing anything to jeopardize our global empire of domination? That is one of their prime activities. I'd be very mindful about social media, and particularly about sharing social media on the job. I think that's good as well. If you have an email account, if it's a Gmail account, to be mindful that they can just go and look at your whole Google account, which might even be connected to your YouTube page. Depending on how you have things set up, it might be a good idea to have a totally separate account, email account that you use if you need to email anybody on the job, in case they do any referencing, to see what that account is connected to online, just to make sure that they aren't able to trace that back to Facebook or anything else, and start looking to see what you've posted online and what's attached to that particular email account. I hope that's something that people will keep in mind. And again, just, Dr. Kanban would encourage, not to be codified, and just to realize that whites, they are going to look through all that information. So I'm a big fan of not having your real name associated with any of these accounts. And again, if you have email that you're going to use on the job, make sure that is totally separate from your personal email or any other social media accounts where you might talk about white supremacy, racism. Finally, really quick, I was able to contact Mr. Fuller to ask him. We had a black male. He dialed in a few weeks back, and he was talking about being sexually harassed on the job by a white woman, cowbell. And he was trying to figure out, how to neutralize this without this causing more problems. He didn't think being able to just go and report her to the other whites, that he would be believed, that might even, get them riled up and coming after him. And we were talking about different ways to handle that. There was certainly logical concern expressed, if you bring up sexual harassment in a group meeting with all the employees and asking how should one respond and what is the company policy and procedure if someone is making either inappropriate sexual remarks or inappropriate unwanted touching of any sort. What's the policy and procedure and how that's supposed to be dealt with? Bringing that up in a meeting with the white female violator present, and there was logical concern expressed that also might cause a problem on the job. I still think bringing it up in the meeting, I still think that's a viable option to take. I still think that's one that I would recommend to be done, where you're not indicting anyone, you're not naming anyone, you just want to know what the policy and procedure is, and you can even make a request for additional training so that everyone's clear. There's no confusion, no ambiguity about what is acceptable behavior on the job. And maybe we can even have, some training to come in. We can take 30 minutes or however long the training is, an hour, 2 hours, so that everybody understands this moving forward, and we can all, have a much less toxic work environment so we can be efficient and get things done. I asked Mr. Fuller, because that was his suggestion, his recommendation initially, about bringing that sort of thing up in a group meeting. And he said that it would work. He also recommended you might want to just document that this is happening and continue documenting, because he said he thinks it'll be multiple. This will not be the only violation that's taking place on the job for any black person, black male or black female. It's going to be many more things than just this. And he said that he often tries to recommend to waiting as long as possible, and then you can present everything. You can present the whatever inappropriate sexual contact or sexual commentary. You can present that and everything else that you have documented over the time that you have been working there and keeping notes. You can present everything at one time if they're coming at you. His logic was that way. You can do as much. You can get as much constructive value for bringing this forward as possible, as opposed to doing it early. And then, they might be a little bit more cautious around you and not saying as much, so you don't have as much evidence of mistreatment on the job. That was another way that you could handle it if you are able to stand, having these whatever sexual incidents continue to happen. That way you can just continue to document that they are taking place. The only point of deviation that I have with that, with what Mr. Fuller has said. I personally have experienced sexual harassment on the job, and I know from other people who have experienced sexual harassment on the job, that is something that tends to escalate. That's what I've seen. Once the violator, whether it's a female or a male, once they see that they can do inappropriate sexual things to you, whether it's comments or, whatever it is, it tends to increase, and it tends to just get worse and worse and worse as it continues. And that's just the sort of thing that I would try to nip in the bud as soon as possible. I can take, like I said, from personal experience, and I think we've had quite a few folks who have shared in the past. It's just not the sort of thing that you want to allow to continue. Certainly, BGQ, you certainly want to make the best decision for your. End of the day, it is your employment situation. So you certainly want to do everything that you can to take care of yourself so that you can stay employed as long as you want to and not do anything to jeopardize your employment. So make the best decision that you think is going to work out for yourself without making new problems. But just with the any sort of inappropriate sexual activity, my general stance is that sort of thing, you want to try to stop that as soon as possible. The longer that you allow that sort of thing to go, it is just going to get worse and worse and worse, and it's been my experience, it becomes more difficult to stop the longer you allow that to go. I could be in error, but I am speaking both from personal experience and what other folks have shared pattern. Just, it's a pattern I've observed for years now. At any rate, if folks have commentary they would like to share, feel free. The number again, 641-715-3640, and the code is 564-943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. Our caller in the Bay Area, we'll nab him first and then get the rest of the folks as well. Caller in the Bay Area, did you have commentary you wanted to share? Good to hear from you, young sir.
Yes, may I be heard?
Yes, sir.
All right. Greetings, Gus, and to the rest of the callers. So today I went to Black Student Union, talked about John Standard, and I learned today that he was the one who invented the new improved refrigerator and oil stove. Later on, we talked about police brutality, and we kind of brought up Terrence Crutcher, the guy in Tulsa who was shot by the police. I think it was for like a parking fee or something. I don't know, but we talked about that for a little bit, and then we got on to the actual police brutality. We looked at the document of justice, and it was like we basically learned it was like a cheat sheet for police officers and law enforcement. We also looked at the protests that went on, especially in Oakland. We would find out that the police one of the police officers actually said, "Let's arrest all of the black hoodies," and I didn't know what it meant at first, but then I realized I know what he was talking about. And then later on, we found out about this. These two police officers who stopped these two black teenagers, and they were trying to find an excuse to stop them or arrest them. So one of the police officers went back to the car, and he was like, "They didn't do anything wrong. What should I do?" And then he was just like, "Make an excuse. Just make something up fast," or something like that. And it kind of got to me how messed up the United States is, especially around the world, and it's just really got to me. And yeah, that's all I wanted to share. Thank you for taking my call.
Fascinating. This is for folks who missed before, our young black scholar here in the Bay Area, his school, they have a black student union where the students get together. I think this group is exclusively for black people, so the black students are able to get together and discuss issues related to racism and what they think, what's going on, that sort of thing. What is the justice sheet that you said was basically like a cheat sheet for enforcement officers? What is that?
The document of justice, it just states, it's like a reflection of what you did throughout the day. The document of justice states it. When I say it's a cheat sheet, it's like they give you blanks and you put the name of the person that was stopped, the date, the place, building, place, and all that stuff. And it's just, yeah, that's basically what a document of justice is.
That is interesting. It sounds like codification for folks if you're going to be an enforcement officer and you're out making up crimes to charge people with and what have you, so that you have your little sheet, so that will help you make it sound legitimate as you go and, do whatever you're doing, fabricating charges and all the other things that you do during the course of a shift as a race soldier enforcement officer. That is fascinating. What sort of commentary were people sharing about the situation where I guess you said you were really bothered by the situation where the officers, they were recorded, where they were just fabricating a charge that they were going to put on, or the other people. What were some of the folks saying about that, and how they think people should be responding or trying to neutralize this activity?
Well, we just thought that it was messed up, and somebody said that we should protest, but then again, we shouldn't because it's not helping. And yeah, that also kind of got to me too. And just based on one of the students' parents, they work at the Oakland Tribune. There are a lot of protests right there, and yeah, so it's just, we just talked about how messed up it was, and we should protest, but then again, we shouldn't because it's not working. It's not helping anyone, but it's not helping Black people specifically. So yeah.
Interesting. You said that, what aspect about that was bothering you? People saying that we shouldn't protest because it's not helping, or what was bothering you about that?
Oh no, what was bothering me was the fact that one of the police officers says to the other police officer make an excuse up to arrest them, and that just bothered me. Because now I know that's what's happening. At least that's what I think is happening. Yeah, that's what I was bothered about.
Got it. Yeah, that is a very common thing. I think even in the Sandra Bland case, Officer Encinia, I think that's what he's on trial for. No one has been charged for her death, but that is what I think he's facing criminal charges for, is just fabricating a reason to arrest her. That sort of thing happens all the time with Black people. That's why I use the term discretion on the program. I think out here in Seattle a few years back, they had a big article, it was the front page of the Seattle Times, about where the charge, when they fabricate, the charge would be obstructing justice. That'll be just the blanket charge that they will throw if you are a Black person and you got on their nerves, or you said something, or you just been a little too sassy with them. They'll just, obstructing justice, bang, that'll be what we'll charge them with. And they were showing how that charge specifically here in Seattle is way disproportionately Black people that get that charge. That's why the Seattle Police Department, they got a dissent decree too, just like Ferguson and New Jersey. Fascinating. You'll have to keep us updated as you continue to attend the group, what you all are talking about, what gets shared, what interesting things you learn as you all continue to dialogue in this group. Fascinating. Thank you so much for calling to share, young sir.
Thank you.
Other folks who dialed in who have a hand up, you should be with us. I think all the people who dialed in with a hand up, line should be open.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Greetings to you, Gus, and to all the callers and listeners. This is Ross. I had a couple of workplace observations. What I've noticed, especially for some reason this year, more than probably any other year that I've experienced in life, is that more and more non-white people, and especially Black people, are becoming more and more interested in racism, white supremacy, and doing something about it. And I haven't, like I said, throughout all of my 43 years, I have not had as many people, Black people in particular, bring up this sort of stuff as is happening this year. And yesterday, I was actually on the job. I was going to lunch, and there's a Black male who I've talked to quite a few times in the past, and he sits in a different area, but we see each other fairly regularly. And he's a very pleasant, very nice guy, keeps to himself, minds his business. but we have had, some counter-racist discussion before. So it's not anything foreign. But anyway, I saw him yesterday, and he just had this look on his face that I'd never seen before, and it was hard for me to discern. So I just said, is everything okay? Are you all right? And he actually said, well, yes, I'm okay, but not really. And I said, well, what's the matter? So he just said that all of these recent killings, murders of black males, again, snuff films on camera was really stressing him out and getting to him in a way that he was just feeling very palpably in that moment. And he said it's not that the other killings didn't bother me either, but he said this next rash of killings that are coming up back to back have really been heavily on his mind. And he said that he had a conversation with his best friend who was a female, and that they made a pact that they would seek to learn as much as possible about racism, white supremacy, so they can do something about it. And I said, wow, that's interesting. So we just further on, we got into more of a conversation, and we took it away from any area where we can encounter any white terrorists. So I was just kind of building with him. I gave him information about the program. He was extremely grateful about that. I also gave him resources. I gave him the titles because he was really looking to do a lot of heavy research. So I talked to him about Dr. Ani's book, Dr. Welsing's book, Neely Fuller's book, and Medical Apartheid. And I said, I think those four are the foundational texts that every black person should first have in their library, and second, study if you really want to understand how the system works and how deadly these creatures are. And as we were conversing, he was just extremely grateful for that. We just talked a little bit more, and I tried to give him some information on how to kind of decompress in regards to maybe kind of working through the stress in a positive way so it doesn't eat at him. And actually, he said he wouldn't be able to call in tonight, but he said he's going to make it a point to probably call in tomorrow and Saturday, because I've told him about the upcoming shows and everything. And he was extremely happy just to be able to have that sort of conversation, I guess, get that information out. And I noticed that later on that afternoon, he seemed to be a little bit less, under a little less pressure, I would say, after we had that conversation. So he came back to me today. He was, again, extremely grateful. He said, I really want to thank you for this information. I'm getting on it like ASAP. I talked to my best friend about it. So just want to let you know, so got another person that, I put onto the cows. And I've just noticed in this particular job that I've come across quite a few young black people who are very interested in doing something about what they've been bearing witness to. They may not fully understand what these things are, but as their interest is piqued, some of the discussions that I've had, I've always brought up the whole idea and concept, and actually I won't even call it a concept, I say it's a fact, Dr. Welsing's brilliance in regards to white genetic annihilation, and that being the linchpin as to why they function, how they function, and why things haven't changed. So I was able to have that discussion with him. And then today, early this afternoon, I was talking to the Puerto Rican girl that sits next to me. She's on my team. And we got into conversation again, and she brought it up just about some of the things that were happening about racism, and I was able to, talk to her as well, and she had never really heard about genetic annihilation, but once I explained how it worked to her, and that being the reason why things have not changed specifically for black people in 500 years, she totally was like, wow, I have never heard anything like that in my life, but I'm glad you told me, because it made some things make sense to her as far as some of the stuff she's experienced and that she's seen and what she has been bearing witness to in the news. So again, like I said, I'm just finding, and this is something on the job, that this job is pretty much the most codified job that's run by white people I've ever worked on, in the sense that overtly speaking, they never bring up anything in the news. The only thing that I experienced them bringing up in the news is the shooting in Orlando, and again, they catered to the whole sexual deviant posse in regards to, wanting to make sure that they were okay and all of this stuff. And then the only time that they even thought to bring up any issue that was black was when the young black male on my job brought up the fact that they seem to be ignoring, these overt stressful issues of racism that are stressing out the people on the job, even though they might not overtly be talking about it. So again, this job being as codified as it is, it was just interesting that I just was able to perceive this from this coworker of mine, and just able to have a viable conversation with him, give him information that he's definitely is resonating with him, and he's seeking to grow in his understanding of racism and white supremacy. So those are my 2 workplace observations, and thank you for taking my call. I'll be listening out for some of the other callers. I appreciate you. Thanks.
Right on. Appreciate the promoting the program. Hopefully they'll give us a jingle, share a thought or two, take advantage. These incidents, the different shootings and different things that have been coming up over the most of the year, really. Attention and showing more willingness to speak, learn about, study racism, white supremacy to solve some of these problems. Try to take advantage. Other people who dialed in, lines should be open. Feel free.
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Is this Gusty?
This would be Gus.
Hey, Gus, thank you. First of all, I want to say to you, thank you for your show. It's a great show. Being where I'm at, we really need a lot of this, and I have to be honest with you that I don't know if I could have found something as good as what you're offering. I do want to weigh in on a couple of things I noticed that I've listened to over the course of time, going back listening to podcasts. First, I want to speak on the, if you don't mind, I noticed you guys bring up a lot of racism or, white supremacy going on in workplaces. Particularly, I'd like to weigh in on that because of my own experience. I started out as at one point in time, I was a kill floor butcher. If anyone doesn't know what that is I was the guy that actually kills livestock and so it gets to your plate as a steak or whatever you want to eat it as. In this environment, I found myself really trying to excel because I came in at an entry level after coming from prison. And my passion and my goals were to move up in this industry, particularly which they call a dying art, because livestock butchering is no longer in the hands of humans. It's really automated nowadays. So my goal was to get involved in that and become as good as I could be. In doing so, I recognized right off the bat, and I guess I need to rewind so people get a better understanding. My first week as a kill floor butcher, one of the first instances of racism I experienced was one of the boning processors, the people who cut your steaks, came up to me and asked me, how do I feel about him saying nigger? And my response to him was, well, how do you feel about me using this knife? At that point, obviously, I wasn't so codified, but it made him realize I wasn't there to make friends, I guess. And I had no interest in listening to anything that was not part of work. As I tried to progress in this environment and in this industry, I found myself constantly being addressed with racism. And when I say it, I don't say these little covert things that people can't recognize. I mean, these were words being outright said to me. You know, one day I was asking one of the gentlemen before we went to lunch, can you spray the water over here so I could get my boots clean? And he told me, what do I look like, a nigger? So I took this complaint to the head, you know, to the upper management, and they wasn't really quick at it, at trying to address it. So I tried to call the Urban League and the NAACP here in our city, and I was only told, you know, basically by the NAACP, you know, my complaint wasn't discrimination because I was hired. At that time, I'll be honest, I didn't know much. I later found out, you know, with my wife helping me out, that it was a harassment case. However, I feel the NAACP let me down because they could have easily said, you know, we'll help you with this. One thing I wanted to chime in on and add to is that one thing I've noticed, in my opinion, this is my opinion only, after leaving that industry and becoming an independent contractor, I'm in business for myself nowadays, is that it doesn't matter where you're at. This stuff, this whole racism, white supremacy shows up everywhere, particularly on commercial job sites. And when I hear people constantly saying, well, we don't want to deal with, or we're against illegal immigration. And I've had guys on my crew say this before, and I would say, well, what do you mean when you say that? And their response is, well, we don't want undocumented people who cannot prove their citizenship. What struck me as ironic is we were on a federal base one year doing a bunch of tile work, and this same statement came up, and the base decided that they were going to close off one entrance that is no longer accessible to unregistered contractors or sub-laborers. So that meant we had to go get badged up at the military base. Well, once everybody got badged up and we could come through the actual gate, this guy makes the statement, man, I can't stand these illegals. So I said, well, what do you mean by that? So he told me, and I think everybody knows what that means. Anyway, make a long story short, I just basically asked him, how does a guy that we can clearly see and we can clearly tell does not speak English pass for George Washington or John Smith or something like that, to that nature? These things are disturbing to me because I believe what you believe. There's no way white people don't know what they're doing. I've seen it firsthand. I know they know what they're doing. And they don't offer no excuse. What I found is often they'll want us, and when I say us, I'm talking about black people. They often want us to side with them when they're against other people. I wanted Gus T Renegade's perspective on that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Sounds like first-time caller. Glad that you were able to join us. My thoughts just on two of the quick aspects. The first portion of what you shared with the whole nigger thing with the white person, and I appreciate you sharing that. This was you're still learning at that time. I'm still learning. All of us are in that position. I think in that sort of situation, I would be careful if you threaten, this is just the listeners in general, if you threaten a white person in that way, like if they make a racist comment or do something racist, and that's the way that you respond, where it's suggesting that you might do something, some sort of counter-violence to deal with what they have stated or how they have mistreated you, it's been my experience what the racists will do, they will come to punish you and say that, oh man, that is violence against another employee, and we just can't tolerate that, and they might fire you on the spot. That's been my experience. They won't say anything at all about this person calling you a nigger. I mean, they could have called your mom a nigger, your grandmother, your whole family, and that'll just be, John is, he was from Alabama, and, we really apologize, and, we're trying to get him to stop doing that. But the violence thing, I mean, there's just no excuse. We have a zero tolerance policy. That's the way that they're probably going to deal with it under the system of white supremacy. So I certainly would not encourage folks to do that. My strategy for that situation, just either asking questions, how do I feel about you using the term nigger? Say what you need to express yourself, and then may I ask a question? What do you do with a nigger? Who are the niggers? Who do you feel a need to call a nigger? Just you can ask your question and let it ride, and or you can say nothing if you have your recorder and just record. Feel free, sir. Knock yourself out, and then you can just record him calling everybody a nigger, and then when it comes down the road, something comes up, you have your audio of him calling, President Obama, First Lady Michelle Obama, nigger this, nigger that, 160 times, it might make your case go a little better. To the second portion of it, in terms of wanting black people to support whatever view that racists take on the job, if they are talking bad or mistreating other non-white people, quote-unquote illegals or whomever it happens to be. I think this is something we talked about on the program pretty often, where racists on the job, if they're making racist jokes or just any form of practicing white supremacy where they try to make it seem like you are included. I might have a problem with these non-white people over here, but you are cool. We are down. We are friends. And I might even share some of my racist antics about how we are mistreating these other non-white people. I might share some of that with you to get you to laugh with me as though, yeah, this is really funny and you're doing the right thing and you agree with me. These folks are whack. They will do that sort of thing. And I think a lot of us sometimes, because we're confused, we'll go along with it, not understanding that they're doing the same thing. They've got the same plan, same agenda for you, and they're probably doing it right now. As soon as you leave, then it'll be, oh, yeah, that dumb nigger, not all right. Really, you do not want to participate in any sort of talking bad or joking, any sort of down-putting, mistreating other non-white people on the job. You do not want to participate in any of that because it's just going to be targeting you later, and it might make it more difficult for you to address your situation of being mistreated if you are laughing, or they can make it seem like you were a party to whatever jokes or messing around they were doing targeting other non-white people. So absolutely, the pattern is there, and like I said, I just try to get a reputation for being someone who doesn't participate in any form of that, so that they do not, bring that sort of stuff to you in terms of joking, mistreating other non-white people on the job, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Gusty?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Sir, I swear to God, you're somebody I could really run around with and have a good time talking with. So, before I let you guys go, I want to share this because I notice you speak a lot about, or at least the compensatory call-in is a lot about racism on the job. I want to share something with the audience briefly. When I started my stint, and I want to kind of help clarify that happened all but about 15, 16 years ago. Since then, I've been an independent contractor. I'm a builder, and I appreciate it. But at the same time, I'm aware that my business is not protected by being independent, and that's why I want to say this to the listening audience, is that I'm fully aware that my business is still surviving, a head above water, because my number one client obviously is the very people we have to deal with, that we don't want to deal with, in the terms that they put on us. Often what I found, and I'll just say this, when I've heard a lot of listeners talk about racism on the job, particularly where women are involved, I'll just say this. My wife is she doesn't like me around white women. And I'll say that. She doesn't like it because she says, and it took me a while to catch on, she's like, have you noticed how they look at you every time you come around? And I was like, no. And I really didn't notice. Thank you for the cowbell. But I realized as a young person coming from the southern states that there was some type of attraction white women wanted from me. I couldn't figure it out myself. I wasn't attracted to them myself. I did date a few of them in my younger years. But here's a scenario that I would like to share with the audience that took place with me about 10 years ago. I had a customer was so adamant, and I'm an independent contractor. She was so adamant about having me come back and forth to estimate a job. Typically, we give one free estimate. And I don't know why, and I would have to say, truthfully, in my heart of hearts, I probably was allowing myself to be led in. But ultimately, in the end, it turned out she wanted to give me sex for whatever reason. And I'm going to just be honest and say I did it. The reason why I brought that up is because I wanted to say to anyone that has a question as to what our relationship is with white folks, I would just honestly say I won't speak from no one else's writings or theories. I'm going to speak from mine. I know for a fact that this group of people is a weapon of mass destruction against us. I'm not taking any responsibility away from myself, but I'm sharing with people what I've experienced with them directly. And the reason why I can say that is because everything I've done as an employment position, I rarely found myself in high numbers of my own people. I typically always ended up being the only one there. And I found that what I'm attracted to leads me into environments that are not occupied by us or we're being pushed out of. And building is one of those things we're being pushed out of. But I want to go back to what I was saying about the woman. Here's something I want everybody that's listening to understand I went through. My experience was this woman, I mean, she played up every story you could think about. I'm getting a divorce. My husband is leaving me for another man. It's my birthday. I just want to have a good time. Whatever, woo-de-woo. And I accommodated. But through that experience, I can honestly tell people who do not understand, when you say there should be no relationship between us and other groups, I agree 100%. I truly believe that this group is a weapon of mass destruction on us. Period. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Gus.
Wow. Thank you kindly for sharing. I know we have had listeners in the past who have, I guess, just questioned how come the sexual thing doesn't come up more frequently with regards to workplace racism, because they're thinking a lot of that whites propositioning or sexually harassing black females and black males on the job, thinking that should come up a little more often during workplace racism. But there we go. And the abusive aspect of it, making sure that folks grasp that every time that happens, it is the white person who is the maldoer. They are exploiting, sexually victimizing the non-white person regardless of how it goes down. And another principle, I know Dr. Welsing and Mr. Fuller, they talk about this all the time, when it's white female, black male, or non-white male dynamic, the white female, contrary to patriarchy and all that other hogwash that you will hear, it is the white woman who is the most powerful person in that arrangement, and she is the one making the decision about whether this is going to happen, and she also can be the one who makes the decision that she's done with this, and now, I just want to be extra trifling as I exit, if I want to make any accusations or do any other dastardly things as I am finishing off all of this. That also is their prerogative, the position that they can take being more powerful. So just be very mindful and take that real serious, because a lot of people end up having a lot of problems on the job in relationship to that. Any of our listeners, folks that are on the line, if you had questions, commentary on what you've heard thus far, or if you have your own situation you would like to share, feel free. Yes, sir.
Good evening to all. Man, that was a sad story. Man, I don't know, man. Just listening to the brother's story. She said her husband was cheating on her with another man. I don't think I could have did it. Like, you don't know what you got. Just very typical white behavior. I did have one I wanted to add. First, today at work, it was a smell of smoke. I had left the building to go to the store because I'm a little under the weather. I went to get some some pills, some Dayquil and stuff. And when I was entering the building, I see everyone leaving. So I'm thinking, okay, what's going on? So everyone's leaving. And I see the guy I work with, he has a megaphone. And said they smelled smoke on the floor, and they called the fire department, so it's like a fire evacuation, so I can't go back upstairs. So I'm like, okay. So I'm outside, and I'm already can't breathe, so I'm just sitting there, and he's just entertaining the crowd with the megaphone, and it was like, man, I'm just watching how they're just laughing, and you know how when people aren't laughing with you, it's sort of like you're the joke. And I pulled him to the side. I said, man, stop acting like a Negro. He started laughing because he knew exactly what I was saying. Oh, you don't understand. I said, nah, you're going too much, man. Just relax for a while. Sit down next to me with the megaphone. It's embarrassing me. He started laughing because, he knows exactly what I'm saying. But I've told him this before. It's just that hunger for white validation is just so strong. Now, the white female who terrorizes my ears with her story, which I do like to hear, so I let her do it. She came up to me the other day. Did you see this guy get shot in Tulsa? And I'm like, no, you know. So of course I saw it. So, you know, tell me what happened. So she runs down the story, getting in with his hands up, and then he starts moving to the car fast, and reaches in and he pings him and shoots him at the same time. And, you know, he shouldn't have reached in the car. And I'm like, really? Wow. I said, do you think that they needed to shoot him? Well, you don't know what he has in the car. I said, would you have shot him? Oh, I probably wouldn't have. You know, I don't know. You know. So, of course, today, oh my God, did you see the news last night? I mean, this thing in North Carolina is crazy. They're breaking the cops' windows. They sent cops to the hospital. I'm like, wow, what happened in North Carolina? You don't watch the news? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I watch, but I didn't see this, you know. Oh, well, let me tell you what happened. So she gives me her rundown of the story. Black cop shot this guy. He had a gun, and he was waving at him, and, you know, what do they expect? And, you know, they're just going crazy. This isn't even something worth rioting over. This guy was definitely wrong. And I just sat back and listened. And I asked little questions here and there, but not too much to really get too much of my perspective, just enough to keep her talking enough till she got sick of the fact that I wasn't talking and, you know, would leave me alone. But just very interesting. However, I did give her a little pushback this week on something. I kind of got caught off guard, you know, but I caught myself, you know. But, you know, her views are just so toxic, you know. And I just wish I mean, it really at this point, I don't even want to record her because, I mean, I like hearing it, but it gets to the point where it's so white, it's so racist that, you know, it only in your sick, twisted head is this rational. So you're trying to rationalize it to me, but I know you're a racist, and that you're just trying to come with the talking points. And other than that, I'll mute my line. Thank you. Question: the first little audio you played, did the lady say she had a problem with being called a Negro?
One of her white coworkers, she said, had been to Spain and she brought back chocolates, and apparently one of the chocolates was called Negro. And the white coworker asked her if the chocolate was racist because it was called Negro. That was what it was. And so she was, I guess, dark matter, black female, she was saying that she thought the term Negro was racist and that it was not acceptable. It was not appropriate to just be using that term in the workplace, to keep going back and forth, just saying that over and over again. And the white woman just kept saying, you know, what are you talking about? It's just chocolate. It's not racist. It's just, you know, it's a name for chocolate. Negro means black. It's dark chocolate. What are you talking about? You're acting crazy, just trying to say that the chocolate is racist and everybody else. That was the exchange that she was talking about.
Got it. Because, you know, I was called a Negro in the 5th grade by a teacher. Called us a bunch of Negroes and ignoramuses. And, of course, you know, everyone went home, I guess, is best up to their mother. So my mother and about 20 other mothers was at the school the next day, and a few fathers too. This sister Helen, a nun, she went through this whole spiel about when she was raised. That's what black people were called. She didn't mean anything racist by it. You know, she'll never use it again, but, you know, when she was a little girl, that's what you called a black person, as a Negro, and she started crying, and of course, my mother and the other mothers hugged her, and it was all over, but just thought of that when that whole thing went down. I couldn't hear the lady clear because her accent, but I did hear the Negro part.
Mm-hmm. It's in the archives. It might be a little clearer if folks go back listen to the broadcast to hear what she had to say. If you listen to it there, it might be a little clearer. But definitely that, I can speak for myself. That has been a challenge over the years, even when it's like crystal clear connection and it sounds like I'm talking to the person, like that we're in the same room talking at the same table, just the different accents and talking to people from around the world. That is something that takes a little bit of understanding what's being said, even if they're speaking English, just the different accents and how their voice sounds. It does take a little while to adjust to. At least that's been my experience. We had a person who wrote in as well. I think she is on the line also, but as I stated, sometimes people are not in a clear spot. And again, this is not spectator counter-racism. That is the problem now. We have too many spectators. We need people to be more active. And again, for workplace racism, I just do not believe, I've said before, about just going and picking at least one person at random per workplace racism broadcast, because I simply do not believe it is possible to have this many black people on a broadcast. Even if it was 5 of us, I would suspect all 5 of us should have commentary on workplace racism, much less to have, 30, 40, 50 people who dial in and have the vast majority of them just listening. That is incorrect. This is definitely active participation. Again, you can be sharing, looking at your total work history and picking out different incidents. I am sure there are some things that stand out with you having a better understanding of racism, white supremacy, things that happened previously that you now grasp. Oh, that was me being victimized by the system of racism, some of the racist people that I was working with, things that you did then, how you responded, and how you would respond now with the better information that you have. That is certainly constructive, I think, for people to hear. Dial in again, the number 641-715-3640, the code 564-943 #. Press *6 if you would like to participate. We had our caller in Wisconsin. She wrote in. She's talked to us about her workplace situation before, being sexually harassed on the job, different things that were happening to her from different white different white employees that she was working with, just doing different things to mistreat her on the job. She wrote in, she said, "Update on my workplace. I was terminated last month. There was no conclusion to the investigation that I had reported about being sexually harassed and bullied on the job. I was told that I was terminated for not reporting. This was not true, but that didn't matter. I found out later that after filing unemployment that 3 different white people wrote letters saying that I didn't report in with the dispatcher, Voltron." She wrote that. I'm not saying it. "So now I am in the process of appealing the unemployment decision against me because I was terminated. I'm relieved to some extent about not having to work there anymore, but on the other hand, I need some sort of income to sustain myself. I'm taking this time to take a much-needed break and relax." Her report that she wrote in, and I think just for clarification, I think she wrote in, I think it was she had an employment evaluation where she reported the sexual abuse that was happening on the job. It was a white person. He was making inappropriate comments, and I think he'd even said something, it was her and another black female employee, where he said, it was something to the effect of, if you see the van rocking, don't come a-knocking, suggesting some sort of sexual activity. I'm paraphrasing from memory. That might not be exactly what he said, but he had said something like that, and it was some other just really lewd, inappropriate behavior that she reported. I think she had a workplace employment evaluation where you self-evaluate your performance on the job and what your work experience has been, and within that report, she reported about the sexual abuse, and then later on, they terminated her. That's been my experience, number one, about white people working together. I think Dark Matter reported that in the audio clip at the beginning of the program in the UK, them working together, coordinating their activity to abuse and mistreat a black person. That's worldwide. You can expect that all the time. And then making up any reason. I think I played the clip last week where Mr. Fuller, he did say, if they decide they want to get rid of you, that's what's going to happen, and it's not a whole lot that you can do about that if they decide that they want to get rid of you. Again, why I certainly understand anyone who, is definitely something to take serious in how you deal with these different issues and being abused, mistreated on the job, because that does happen to a lot of folks if they try to bring up or, hey, I'm being mistreated, and correct things. Attention where they'll say, oh, you're attacking a whistleblower and this is, unwarranted retaliation, unjust retaliation, and this sort of thing happens to black people all the time. And why I do state consistently we should be trying to think of strategies and just figuring out the best way to do this sort of thing where it's not causing more problems, where if you leave the job, it's when you want to on your terms, that sort of thing. So definitely something to keep in mind. But these are the circumstances that we're under, and why I think this is so important that we should be talking about this, coming up with strategies, figuring out things to do. Other folks have commentary, things they would like to share, feel free. We have not heard from you, definitely feel free to share as well.
Hey, Gus, can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Gus, listening to the email person, I'm actually throwing this at you, so you can throw it back at me. I often have a conversation with my daughters. I have 4 daughters, and I have a wife, and I often remind them, because I work out on construction sites, and particularly in commercial construction, something that I realized I became well aware of real quick was that when the guys gather, and let's just say there's a female walk past the site, that's just the easiest way for me to say it. She could probably be in normal clothing, whatever you want to consider normal clothing. The group of people that we're discussing, that I often can, when someone does this so-called catcalling thing, that's the group of guys I see gathered. And I often talk to my daughters and my wife and just tell them, I'm not a chauvinist by no means. I just mean, when I try to tell them, it's out of from good intentions, okay? It's just simply to say, ladies, try to cover yourself in a way where you yourself can say, there is no reason for you, meaning the perpetrator, to be talking to me that way. I haven't invited you to make a comment to me. So often, I don't know if that's what's going on in that young lady's email, but I know from experiencing watching these guys do that, it's sickening. I got to be honest, it's very sickening. Some of the stuff that's said, I try to tell women, and it's almost like they can't believe. It's almost like they think I'm the chauvinist. I would love your response on something like that.
My comment would be, regardless of what the person is wearing, females can certainly wear whatever they want to wear. That does not justify abuse or mistreatment. That being said, given that we are in a global empire of white terrorism, and we have had many white guests who've come on this program who have affirmed that a central, maybe the defining aspect of white culture, white supremacy culture, is raping black people, males and females. Given that that's the environment that we're in, our situation, to me, it's logical to kind of factor that into your wardrobe. I would say particularly on the job, to just keep that in mind, that this is the environment that we're in. And I know we've had people who have commented before just about workplace racism, to just keep that in mind, that we're not dressing like we're going to the club. We're not dressing like we're trying to be as cool as we possibly can, and we want to look our best and what have you. Not saying that you want to look terrible, but just keeping in mind that for the workplace, how you the image that you want to portray, that you're not looking like that you're about to go out for a night on the town when you're going on the job, because that certainly will have a huge impact on how people think about you, how people talk about you, and how they treat you. So I definitely think that's important, really at all times, but certainly for the job, since this is focused on workplace racism. I think that's something that we should keep in mind. Again, not that it justifies you being mistreated, whatever you are wearing, but I mean just these are the logistics of what we have to deal with in a system of racism, white supremacy. Let's see. Other folks who...
So Gus,
go ahead,
can I
sir.
respond to that real fast, please? So I guess I would have to throw it back at you in a way that I hear you so eloquently say. There's no, as we know, racism, white supremacy to be a global thing. And any person that classifies themselves as classifies themselves as white is either participating directly or has some knowledge somewhere, somehow. Is that correct, sir, before I go further?
Absolutely. I would say pretty
Okay.
much if you're a white person, you got to be in that first category, but for sure, proceed.
So here's why I bring that up. It's not to challenge you. It's just to simply say, this is why I inform my daughters. We're not in our own game. We don't make the rules here. We need to be mindful that the people that, because here's why I say this, Gus, is that I've often seen, white females go out and be able to damn near dress naked and get kudos. And the minute a black female does it, she gets shut down quick. And that's all I have to say.
That is the system of white supremacy. That is logical to me. Other folks, if you all had comments, questions based on what you've heard thus far, or if you had your own instances that you wanted to share, you should be with us as well.
Hello, Gus.
Yes, sir.
The black male that was talking about his personal encounters with the white female made me think about something I forgot about at the job today that happened. Last workplace racism, I discussed a new white female that is one of the nurses that they recently hired, and she's going through training right now, so she's training with the nurse that's on my team. She's hideous. She looks like Lurch. And I explained last time that she was looking at a Puerto Rican female and was basically analyzing her and her physical appearance. And I could tell just based on how she was looking at her and whatnot that she was essentially jealous that she was a melanin deficient mutant. And the same female, today she was being trained and she was sitting across and to the right from me, which is where my other coworker normally sits, but he was absent today. And one thing I noticed, because I pay her no attention, I completely ignore her. I don't even say anything. She doesn't say anything to me. I don't say anything to her. She's doing her thing with her training. I'm doing what I have to do, so I'm not even thinking about her. So I noticed as she was sitting across from me, she kept looking at me, but it wasn't like, it was very covert. She would do these glances every so often, and I don't know what that is. I'm assuming it could be something going in the realm of potential sexual terrorism. I don't know. Most times, I would say 99% of the time, white women know to stay away from me. I think my aura just oozes, stay away from me. So I haven't really had an issue with these deviant terrorists. But I noticed that today, so I'm going to just keep my eye open in regards to paying attention to her mannerisms when she's around or in my vicinity, so that way I can further analyze what that is. But I did, hearing his story made me think about the fact that I overlooked that when I was telling you my experiences earlier today. So it's something that I noticed. It's the first time I've noticed it. So I will definitely keep you posted on how that develops, but she'll know better than if that's where she's going, not in a very short time. I'll put it like that. Thank you, and I'll mute my line.
I see. Definitely wanting to keep us informed and just being alert about that. I think being more informed about racism, white supremacy, and how prevalent that sort of thing is, being sexually terrorized on the job And I think for even a lot of us, even going back, I know Thomas talks pretty regularly about, when whites, that's one of the ways that they practice racism. Oh, I can come and be nice to this Negro, or I might even flirt with them. They'll feel like, hey, this white person is validating me. They're accepting me. They are, affirming that I'm somebody. I'm an important black person. And so we think that that's, something to feel good about when it's the exact opposite. That is, massive sign of danger. And I think it should be taken seriously. If nothing else, just to really emphasize that. Take that extremely seriously on the job and really try to steer something like that. Other folks who have commentary, did you have things you wanted to share? Questions about what you've heard or your own situation?
Yeah, I wanted to say, just what the guy said about the black female can dress very provocatively and be looked at in a negative way, and the white female can dress more provocatively and not be looked at, as one of the words they might use to describe a black female who dresses provocatively. White men get away with the same things at the workplace. They don't have to be dressed and tidy. They don't have to come to work with clean clothes. They could look like a bum off the street, unshaved, ungroomed, and keep their job and get their raises, and everything is just fine. But whereas the black person has to present themselves a certain way, and just in order to keep their job, to keep the white people feeling comfortable enough around them that they'll keep them employed. And I think that's also a huge act of racism. And I just wanted to follow up. I did slip up this week, and I know my mother. My family's from New Jersey, and they hate Chris Christie. And this white female that I work with is from New Jersey, but she loves him. So I didn't never speak to her about him before, but just speaking to her, I could tell that she voted for him. And I can't stand him personally. And I slipped up and called him Humpty Dumpty because that's what, my family, we call him, And she got really offended. I had to kind of clean it up real quick. Because, I don't want to reveal, who I like or don't like to white people. I'm just learning from you. You're the expert. That's my whole thing. So I did slip up and do that. And I mean, no, I think.
I do think that's really important. Plug again our book, Spook Who Sat by the Door. I think that ends up being a major part of the main character, Dan Freeman, his codification for his plan, not doing a whole lot of chit-chatting about what he thinks about different things or different people, just allowing the white people to talk. Real important, in my view. Just that way, you will not have those opportunities where whites, they come in and just try to say things to get you upset, and or if they find out, oh my Lord, this Negro has all these radical views, we need to get him up out of here, or we just want to make more problems for them. That's been my experience. So I think that's fantastic. And even when you shared earlier about, when they bring up the shootings and what have you, like, what are you talking about? I'm not sure. That form of deception, I can handle that. My little pecan-sized brain, I can deal with that. No problem. What are you talking about? No, I haven't really been paying attention to that. What's going on with that? Oh, wow. Okay. Wow, I didn't know anything about that. What, you told us something happened? Oh, wow, I didn't know anything about that. That would be my standard response. Anything like that happens, anything related to racism, white supremacy, when the Donald Sterling thing was big news a few years back. What happened now? I don't really keep up with the NBA. Who is this Donald Sterling guy? Oh, wow, okay. He got standard performance. Anytime something like that comes up on the job, I don't have an opinion. I don't know what you're talking about. And then I might insert my question. I haven't heard about that. What do you think about that? And then I would sit quietly and listen to what they had to say. Other folks that we have not heard from, feel free, or if you have your own situation, questions about what we've heard thus far, feel free.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. I had a few observations from the last couple of days or weeks. The first was, like, I had to be a witness on, like, a marriage ceremony. And like it's interesting that the quality of white women that is in this tragic arrangement with a non-white male is just like abysmal, you know, because I'm looking at this guy and seems to be, you know, young guy, I guess average or whatever, but she is just really overweight and what I call bottom tier and things like that. And it's like she dominating the interaction, like, as far as what they plan to do, if they want to have a ceremony outside the clerk's office. So, the guy can barely speak, I guess the form of English that's the criteria over in this area of the world. So, she just saying, yeah, we plan on doing this and that. And when the most powerful white person comes in to conduct the ceremony, he's basically, I guess, like saying the words about the marriage, the so-called marriage vows. And, the guy can, I guess, barely repeat it. And I guess he didn't really understand it. So I guess it seemed like she, like what was said before, she, initiated, like she had the dominant power in that dynamic. It's like she taking advantage. She just basically ordering him, no, say it like this and say it like that. You're supposed to wait. It does kind of have like that, that I think Mr. Fuller uses that analogy about the prison, the warden and the prisoner, and it didn't seem like it was even. It didn't seem like it was an equal stance between two people. And I guess, they went through the ceremony, and like that was one. The second one was like there was this female that said a bunch of very sincerely racist things before, and I couldn't remember the whole context. It was a couple of weeks ago, and she ended up saying, because we were all watching TV, and she ended up saying, man, you know what? It's things like that that really makes me want to get, a purge going. So she used that term purge, I guess, relating to that popular movie series. And then I think I asked her something like, oh, I said, are you serious about that? And she was like, yeah, because these stupid people out here, they just get me upset. I think it was a customer she had in her department. So she didn't seem to really follow up with what she wanted to actually do about a purge, because she usually says terms like people being castrated and using terms like, I think, sterilization. Yeah. People need to be sterilized. Like, she don't really say, what people in particular in terms of a classification, but she'll just say it in a generality. So if somebody were to ask of her, like, whom are you speaking of? And she'll just say something like, oh, I'm just saying people in general, but those are terms related to black people historically or non-white people worldwide. And then, words like population, like terms like that are used. But yeah, she mentioned something about the purge. And like the third was, I was looking up something on one of our programs, and like I noticed it was a race classification, like it was like a pull down box. And what I found, what was interesting, was that one of the classifications said business. Like, it had African American, it had white, it had not known, or something like mixed, and then it said business. Like, you can scroll down and click the word business and have business be your classification. So, I'd like to ask if anybody has ever seen that. And like one last incident was, like, I drive this company vehicle to go pick up the mail every day, and my new supervisor, because I made a transfer, like she wanted to see what the vehicle looked like, because she didn't know, what all my job duties entailed, because everything got transferred from another department. So, you know, I went up to the window and I said, "Oh yeah, you can see it from this conference room right here." And then she looked she looked out the window, you know, like she was, is this it? Oh, you know, I expected it to be some, I expected it to be some kind of beat up car. I was like, wow. I like, you know, that was like a major act, you know, white supremacy. And then she tried to, and then the pun on that is the Jeep is white. It's a white Jeep. So, yeah, I guess she expected it to be, you know, some kind of low quality, you know, obsolete looking vehicle. So, you know, I kind of had a chuckle at that. And that's pretty much all I have for this week. Thank you.
Wow. Fascinating. The purge again. That is exactly why that is one of the few times that we invested a good chunk of time and energy discussing that film series. As I stated, I think very important, capturing the racist zeitgeist of 2016, that very sort of mentality that might have Donald Trump being the predecessor. So I've said President-elect Donald Trump come November. But we'll have to see how that plays out. But I totally agree in terms of those terms. Anytime you have whites who are talking, using the terms population control or sterilization or castration, even if he's just saying sterilization, it's the same thing. Generally, they are talking about black people. That's who they are targeting invariably anytime that sort of language and the purge as well. Any source that type of language is being promoted. They're talking about these people are worthless, or there's a problem with these people, and the world would be better if we could just get rid of them. They're talking about folks with melanin. You can, be certain about that. And that's the sort of thing as well in the job that it would be almost impossible, in my view, to be able to get them written up, reprimanded for that sort of thing, because it would be, they're just making an exaggeration. They're certainly not being racist. They're not talking about castrating black people or sterilizing black people. She didn't call out any group of people in particular. She was just, voicing her exaggerated frustrations with just people in general, being stupid and that sort of thing. They're dumb white people. They're dumb black people, and blah, blah, blah. That's the way that they're most likely going to deal with all of that. Other folks that are with us that we have not heard from. Business as a racial classification. I would even be curious as to what that means. Who can you point to a person whose racial classification is business, or when we use the business racial classification, when is that used? Who, appropriately, correctly fits that classification? I've never heard that in my life, and I would probably ask someone just so I'll know when I need to use this for this. Oh, okay, this is someone who's a member of the business racial classification, so that I can put that down. That is first time for Gus T Renegade. Other folks that we have not heard from, you should be with us. If you have questions, commentary of your own, feel free.
Yes. Hello.
Let's see. We have 3 people. I'll take 0997 first.
Good evening. My name is Brian Cordell. I'm just going to relate 2 things. That when I was at the railroad, I worked at the railroad for 10 years, and I ran into the most racist bunch of people. I had just come out the military, and I guess I was a free spirit because I thought everything was fair and above board at that time. I was like 22 years old. And came into this railroad situation. And I used to hear these guys in the locker room, these old white guys, telling stories, but I used to just think they were stories. And we had a black Boilermaker. He was he was the oldest seniority man there. And they, I heard him one day talking about they used to make Hamp in the dead of the winter in Chicago change his clothes in a boxcar outside. He couldn't use the locker room because they wouldn't allow it. By the time I got there, he was the top man, so they had to treat him a little different, but they would still tell those stories. I guess they were trying to check us because we were a different breed. We came in, and most of us were prior service, young men, and we thought the game was above board, which it wasn't. The clerks were all against us, aligned against us. These poly purebreds would smile in your face and cut your throat so quick, to the quick, you wouldn't know it hit you about things. You get called as superintendent about things these people are saying that you did that didn't happen, and you You're standing here trying to defend yourself about things that you have no knowledge of. But as I came to find out, as I worked there for 9 years and 11 months. This is how cold these guys were. I got fired 1 month before I would have been vested in a pension. But that was really nice because we had other young gentlemen. If you bought a new car, you get a 30-day suspension. If they found out you had a house, you bought a new house, you get a suspension. This is how these boys play. This is in Melrose Park, Illinois. It's a now defunct Chicago Northwestern Transportation Company Railroad. These guys were so prejudiced. I mean, I have never seen anything like it. The way that I ended up losing my job, I came in, I got hurt because I was using a spring-loaded hose on a wet floor and it was slippery. When I disengaged the hose and put it back in the spool, it took off of me. Back then I weighed probably like 135 pounds. Hurt my shoulder, had to go to the doctor, came back, went to the shop superintendent. They put me in the off book. Now, I was also the local chairman of the union, so I had been in, terrible classes with these people. Almost a few times we almost come to blows because of these investigations that were pulling on people that look like me. And that's the only reason I took the union job was because we had a union representative. He was an older gentleman, about 4'11", but he was a flaming homosexual. I have nothing against whatever rocks your boat, do your thing. Got nothing to do with me. But because all of these young jobs were at stake, we had to have somebody who would go in there and represent us in these investigations because these kangaroo courts that they held, a lot of us got fired, which I ended up doing in the long run. I got fired 1 month before I would have been vested in the pension. And everything these dudes did was strategic. The way they attacked you, they could attack you and call anybody walking off the floor would come in and be a witness against you, and they wouldn't have no knowledge of what they did, but they would fall right in place, come right in and lie. I mean, this taught me a whole bunch of things as a young man, watching these people for almost 10 years, how they operate. They don't care if you have a family. They don't care about you. As a matter of fact, the more you suffer or the more you seem to suffer visibly, the happier they were about you being in misery and pain. So you had to carry yourself a certain way. I mean, just the way you approached it. I could tell you waking up some mornings, because I knew the nonsense I was going to deal with through the day, getting the worst jobs out in the cold, digging pods, putting pods under the rails and whatnot, moving trains through the snow up to my knees. You knew you was going to have a long day every day that you went here with these prejudiced people. And they really made no bones about it. And that's all I have to say, because that's a horrible memory from my young life. And I try to put that behind me because it had me a little bit mean for a while, and I got over it as I got older, you know what I'm saying? But it's something that you will never, once you see this flaming racism, and nobody was ashamed of it. It was like a badge of honor. They all were happy in that. Just creating that misery, they were all happy, from the clerks to the shop superintendent. And it's like they are some kind of a disease. They all attack. I mean, the thing that used to kill me is that they could pull anybody walking around, and they would come in and they would have something negative to say about you, even though they didn't know nothing about you. Never. These people you work with never say nothing to you. They wouldn't even say good morning. So that's all I had. And thank you for hearing me.
Appreciate you sharing. Just 2 quick points I would make. Number one, I think that's something that we've discussed regularly in terms of racists getting enjoyment. I mean, this is their purpose for being on the planet, to terrorize and make black people miserable on into eternity, and not feeling bad about it. As you stated, that is something to be proud of. That's exactly what Leonida McClain, when we read her book about racism, white supremacy in Chicago, when whites were terrorizing Harold Washington, who ended up dying prematurely from a heart attack, she said the exact same thing, that there was no shame, there was no regret, there was no remorse. It was a badge of honor to be proud about being a white supremacist. That's exactly what she said. Leonida McClain about Chicago. You can go back in the archives for the book club if folks want to hear. The other point where you said in terms about being able to bring in people at random to lie and support whatever, deception that they were going to weave to get somebody in trouble or get them fired or whatever the case is. That's what you can do under a system of racism, white supremacy, and you see that worldwide under all areas of people activity, even all the way up to Colin Powell, back with the weapons of mass destruction thing, is easy to do when you are in a position of dominance over another group of people, and they're totally dependent on you, directly or indirectly, for whatever. Be able to, hey, go and, Negra, do you want to come in and support? Oh, you don't want it? Oh, okay, and we got a pink slip for you too. And you just go right on down the line. Somebody is going to say, hey, I want to, keep my little job here. I want to keep, the little bit that I have. Fine, I'll say whatever you want me to say. Give me the script and, I'll go and do it. And just understanding that, and I think it's important as well, just so that we don't get upset, frustrated with the victims that are being used in that way, and understanding the people that are most to blame for this are all white. Racist woman, racist man, racist child. That is just my assessment of counter-racist logic. I thought what you shared about the older... I was just going to say about the older male on the job as well. I thought that was important also. Were you going to add something else, sir?
Yeah, I just thought about this guy. It was a guy, believe it or not, his name was White. He was a red-faced, puffy-faced, big belly, nasty attitude, snarly, garly. This guy, racist. I'm talking about if you saw him, so you racist. And his mannerism, and this was, I'm going to say, he dropped dead in the locker room. And all the young men, when we came downstairs, oh, why'd he die? Why'd he die? Look, the brothers got on the side, and believe it or not, we all clapped. And then we changed our clothes and left because it was time to go home. And I hate to say it, but we all were, I wouldn't wish death on no man. But he was such a nasty son of a gun. How could you be sorry for him? It's like, man, you just did the whole world a favor by leaving here. And that's all I got to say, because I hadn't thought about that in years. And I'm not mean or vindictive like that, but sometimes karma's a mofo. And that's all I got to say.
Sounds like black self... Yes, sir. Thank you for sharing. Sounds like black self-respect to me. The person at 4950, I heard you as well. 4950, were you going to participate? Caller, I don't know if you muted yourself or not. 4950, are you there? Did you have commentary? Okay, don't know if they're just listening. Lady in New York, did you have commentary you wanted to share?
Yes, may I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm just following up with last week on the job. I work weekends, and this weekend was quite eventful. Same white woman pulling the same kind of stunts. Saturday was, okay, just body adjusting to being on my feet 12 hours a day. White woman did attempt to, I guess, have people run errands for her, but on this different floor, she had completely different behavior with, there was another black female training me Saturday. I don't know if this dynamic was different because the black female was older, or if it's because everyone's been put on alert that I do work with my cousin. I overheard her briefly describing the incident with the coffee and me not getting her coffee, and she had one black female shouting about how she would never do that to anybody in the world, not even her worst enemy. She would have got them exactly what they ordered. So I noticed that she did that. She didn't talk to me that much. And just it was a little bit less nonsense on Saturday on the other floor. Sunday, she was back on it. She did her crying drama. Then she brought up that she couldn't because her daughter, again, she has 4 biracial children. She brought up the fact that she couldn't work on the same floor with her daughter, therefore she couldn't be on this other floor, which she was on that floor Saturday. She did not want to work that floor because that side is harder and more work, and she has to leave the building every 30 to 45 minutes to do what no one knows outside, keep her smoke breaks or whatever else. So I was over on that side, which was extremely difficult. I have worked as a nurse before, and I had never made a med error. I made a med error because they had like literally 4 people in my cart trying to so-called help me, instead of having this nurse who had over 20 years of experience and who's worked there for 8 months work this floor. So I was angry. I was a little snarled. I guess that you could see I was upset because I knew it wasn't just a normal, they wanted to train me. My cousin had already told me, listen, I'm not coming in. They're going to try to make you work this floor, and you are not ready to work this floor and that side. But that is what's going to happen Sunday because they tried to do it to me, and I'm not coming in. I'm not dealing with it. She warned me, and she said, do not make her cry, which is like the second or third time that she said, don't make this white woman cry. I didn't. She already did her crying before I got there and made sure she didn't work that side. So with that, me making the med error, she had everyone on the floor talking about how wrong my cousin was for not picking up that extra shift. Even though it was first assigned to the white woman and she did the crying the first week that I started, they deliberated and she did it again Sunday, and then they decided, no, we're just not going to have her work here. It's just too much. So Sunday was extremely stressful. It made me almost think about not wanting to be in nursing at all. But I know now that I'm trying to not be in nursing homes because it's just too much drama. So that was what went on over the weekend. She runs the facility, and she gets what she wants. That's it. I'll mute my line.
Is this the same white woman with the substance abuse problem, or is this 2 different white females?
The substance abuse thing that I was talking about?
Right.
Yes, this is the same woman. Oh, and okay. Sunday, she tried, because we have narcotics, okay, because, again, they had 4 or 5 people so-called training me. Like, there'd be, like, a different person every 30 minutes. Oh, so-and-so's going to help you. And it's because they knew that that floor was extreme. And, like, if I had it the way I wanted it to flow, I would come in, which most people come in about 15 minutes before their shift as nurses to get a nurse report. I would definitely be there 15 minutes before my shift. But this place, if you punch in like 5 minutes before, you can get a write-up, and which I have to write a letter that they cheated me out of an hour and 40 minutes because I had to work over because of the issues that were caused on Sunday, and then there were some issues on Saturday too where they tried to leave me alone on this unit because they did not have a person for a 12 hours. Like they had a 7 to 3, and she made a big fuss she wasn't going to stay after. And so I wind up working this side I was not prepared to work for. And then Sunday they did the same thing, but they had to try to make me do the whole 12 hours on the opposite side, but it's on the same floor, which is a more difficult floor. But back to her, she tried to pretty much steal one of the narcotics from and say she gave it to the patient. So she came to help get me caught up. Told me to, I think it was lunchtime, so yeah, told me to take it down to a patient. And I said, does she have any narcs? And she goes, oh, yes. And she goes back, looks, then opens the cart and puts it, administers in the applesauce so I can give it to this patient. I didn't know that this patient had any, narcs, which, pretty much are usually just some really strong pain pills. She knew. She had already signed off on it, already popped that pill and had it down within the cart so that as soon as I walked off the floor, she had the key. She was going to open it back up and pop it in her pocket or wherever she was going to do with it. So my cousin called in between the shift, and I said, I think this lady just tried to pull one on me. She acted like she put all this woman's medicine in her applesauce, but she had it down in the cart and it already popped and already signed for that she administered, and I was supposed to just hand it off. And she said, "Yep, I told you, watch her. She's tricky. She does it all the time. And if you weren't diligent, pretty much, she would have got you." But either way, it would have just looked like it would have just looked like it was administered because she checked off on it. I'm supposedly handing it to her, and it's mixed in applesauce, but it would have been in her pocket. Same white woman.
Thank you for keeping us updated with the situation on your new job. I think last week when you were telling us about her and her substance abuse issues and just the havoc that she wreaks in the workplace situation, and not wanting to get her a coffee or whatever refreshment she was requesting last week. I think last week I suggested that she probably is still abusing drugs, that this is not an old habit, and I would be stunned if she is not looking for a way to, steal drugs, whatever she can on the job. I mean, this is standard operating procedure for whites, and this is not Gus. They say this all the time, that if they were going to do racial profiling for prescription medication abuse, trafficking, or you're taking the pills yourself or whatever, it would be whites. It is overwhelmingly whites who are doing this. That's how you ended up with all this heroin addiction, is people that are on codeine and Vicodin and all these other opiates, and they just transition to heroin, the street level stuff. But she just sounds just like a total abomination on the workforce, that just any time this could be the reason that you end up getting fired or lose your nursing license or anything, or they end up blaming you and say that you've been stealing medication or not logging them properly because she's stealing them and somehow getting you involved. I'm completely not surprised about her having a vendetta where she's talking to other employees about, what a no good Nick you are because you wouldn't get her a caffeinated beverage last week, and probably getting other black people to participate. And say, oh yeah, that is disgraceful. I wouldn't, do that to my worst enemy. Of course I would get them a beverage. How petty. And that's just standard, particularly when you have, same thing I stated before, when you have people that are victims of racism, and we don't understand white supremacy, we don't understand what it means. Drug-ravaged, poorly educated, no coin having white, if they know about racism, they know enough to wreak all kinds of havoc amongst the black people, which she seems to be demonstrating. The crying white person, male or female, I would say, particularly if it's a sobbing white woman, oh man, and I think that has come up on this program repeatedly. I think it even came up last week, but geez, that is just total devastation. Even if you're in a work environment with predominantly black people, predominantly not, I would say it's probably going to be way more effective if you're in a work environment that has predominantly non-white people. It's been my experience that white people do not as easily fall for that because they know other white people, so they might not be as swayed by those tears. But non-white people, victims of racism, we've been groomed. That's what we're supposed to help. That's what we're supposed to do. Oh man, what can we do to console you? Let's go get you a beverage. Let's, whatever you need. If we can switch things around so you don't have to be on the more difficult floor, we'll just put the other nigger, put her up there and let her be, the one that's running crazy for the day. That's standard operating procedure. Everything that you shared about this environment, I think that had come up before. I think it might have been Roz that asked about wage theft before, about them, because this place is so disorganized. We were sharing that they didn't have a manual to give you, and it was done in a really tacky fashion, and just outlining just all of the problems with this employment agency, this medical center for elderly care. No surprise at all. I think we had talked about that a few weeks back, about them probably trying to do something to cheat you out of your wages or cheat you out of your hours. It just seems like a kind of job that would be extreme, and then to have to be there for 12-hour shifts. Just my sympathies are with you. It seems like it's just going to be not just a job, but just extremely stressful with this one white woman, and then everything else, because they're so disorganized, unprofessional, and corrupt in how they do business. It just seems like it is a lot to have to deal with, even working there just a few times a week. Like, man, I hope you're able to resolve that so you can extricate yourself from there without being damaged too much in the process, because it just seems like this is what it's going to.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, everyone. Just listening to all of these horrified reports on workplace racism, primarily with the number one subject, well, the number one criminal being a white female. And it motivated me to go over in my mind my experiences with white females when I was a firefighter. And it's hard to recall because I didn't spend that much time, although there were and there are white female firefighters with Dade County Fire Department, but for conscious reasons, and I would say just by my fortune in itself, I was able to avoid a lot of experiences. I would say one reason why, because of the nature of the job, is it can be very physically demanding and, of course, dangerous. You can actually die because you're not strong enough in some certain cases. And the call volume where I choose to work at was very high, so it primarily eliminated a lot of females from being on the fire truck. A lot of them would choose to be on the rescue truck, but still in the areas where I worked at, it would maybe be one on the rescue truck, and I was conscious enough to avoid that person. But I would be very observant, and at the same time, as I've heard on the program, that white people are very aware of racism, and they're aware of certain non-white victims. That person actually, as a black person, does focus on racism. And it's not that I would be going to work preaching or anything like that. It's just they would pick up on, I'm pretty sure from my experience, they will pick up on your mannerisms, what you say, what you don't say. That's even different from other non-white black people on the job. And they would make the choice to distance themselves from you. But I remember this one case, though, where this white female actually complained to her supervisors that she was uncomfortable. I think I've mentioned it years ago, but she was uncomfortable. And when they came to myself and another black male who is definitely also is less confused, we both refused. They asked us to write a memo on it, and we both refused to do it. So we're not going to write no memo. Basically, what we stated was that's her problem about being uncomfortable. Were there any violations that were created? And of course the answer was no. And so we're not going to write any memo. And the subject kind of like dropped, from there. And I would advise that to others on their jobs. A lot of times you can be pulled in when an incident occurs or when somebody complains, especially a white person complains about something that you may have done or said, and they want your story, so to speak. That may not be as constructively to your advantage as you might think it is. And the question should be asked: was there any rules that were violated, as far as they're concerned? Because some of the things that you may write down on that memo may end up in quote unquote indicting you in some sort of fashion which you didn't intend for it to be, and that's how tricky and deceitful white people are. That's just a warning that I know from experience. Other than that, I was trying to find a way to process this experience as a football coach at this particular place because it's some very unusual. There's very few surprises with me in coaching. I actually been a football coach longer than I was a firefighter because I started that in 1981 also, and I'm still doing it. But it's probably something that needs to be saved for the Saturday program. Basically what it is up to now 5 or 6 children that I've coached at this particular team that's been shot. So it's probably something that needs to be saved for the Saturday program, which I would bring it up then. I won't be available for tomorrow because of a game that we have tomorrow, but I will pick up on the archives of the book read. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I'm sorry to hear about the epidemic of violence impacting your young black players, and I'm sure myself and many others would definitely look forward to hearing your thoughts and whatever contribution we can make for addressing that. But that is absolutely serious, and I think unfortunately another symptom of the system of racism, white supremacy, to have that sort of widespread violence and lack of value for a black life, even the life of very young black children. Other folks who, if you have questions or comments on what you've heard thus far, I know another thing, retired firefighter reminded me the importance of policy and procedure. That's something I really try to stress on this broadcast and encourage folks, read your policy and procedure. You do not go ahead and review it. Really, you should review it before you accept the job. That was one of the recommendations at Forbes that I read before that I completely agree with. You should get that policy and procedure like immediately, as soon as it's looking like you're going to be working there, because a lot of times a part of your contract, if you're going to be employed for a company, is you signing that you're going to comply with whatever their manual says, their rules and regulations. So you should review that. And I would say sit down, make it something where you can take a week, take 2 weeks, and just read a little bit each day. You don't have to read the whole thing in one sitting because sometimes it can be kind of thick. But just, take your 10 days, 2 weeks, read the whole thing, and then that way you can ask questions if anything doesn't make sense, if there's some tricky wording, and then you can also observe. If you come in from the time that you're employed and you've read the manual, you've read the policy and procedure, you can be making observations immediately. Are they in compliance with what they've written? Are these rules being enforced uniformly, evenly, equally amongst everybody that's employed here? And you can start making note of that immediately. Also, as I said, for folks, when you review that policy and procedure, if anything stands out, if anything is suspicious in the wording, or if you're seeing things that are written in policy and procedure and they're not being applied equally on the job, definitely that's something you want to share, because I think we should all be mindful of that. But certainly, anytime something pops up on the job, you want to stay in the question lane and be able to ask, is this a violation of policy and procedure? If you're being accused of something or they're trying to get you into some sort of situation suggesting that you did something wrong, what policy did I violate specifically? You can even, read off the exact statute that I'm in violation of and see what they say, because a lot of times we're not in violation. They're just, just trying to make up something to get us in trouble. That happens on a regular basis. The female caller that wrote in about being terminated in Wisconsin, she sent us a follow-up email where I asked her, via email, I asked her, do you think that they attacked you for reporting the sexual abuse, and is there anything you would do differently, including not reporting that you were being sexually abused? She wrote back, she says, yes, I think I was targeted from the beginning, probably so I would just quit. Then when I report, go over my policy early on so that I can be more prepared when issues arise on the job and ask questions on the spot when anything inappropriate happens. I would still report the sexual abuse, but I would do it immediately, and also never be surprised by what whites do, or say. They practice racism, white supremacy. She's continuing to learn, as am I. Anyone that we have not heard from, if you have commentary, please do not wait until the last minute. Go ahead and get your hand up. The number is 641-715-3640, and the code is 564943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. The caller at 4950, did you have commentary you wanted to share?
Yes, Gus. Can you get back to me in about maybe 3 minutes, please?
Not a problem at all.
Thank you, sir.
Caller at 8950. Did you have commentary?
Yes, Gus. First time caller. Just started listening to the show a couple of months ago. Really like it. I've been having a lot of workplace issues at my job, and I wasn't really codified when I had my reaction to the workplace racism. So, re-listening to the show, learning what steps I could have taken to make my future at this place of employment better. But long story short, the problem is with the white female manager. She really can't handle stress all that well, and she tends to take out her stress of the job on the employees that are under her. And so months and months of abuse, of being, just talked down to, belittled. She speaks very condescendingly. Just months and months of abuse under her. And often I would engage in just complaining about it with both white and non-white employees that felt the same way. And that ended up kind of biting me later on down the line when I went to finally challenge her in front of our store manager. I think just saying things about her that I didn't like to other people in general, even if they were saying the same thing, we were all pretty much in agreement that her behavior, how she treated us, how she talked to us, how petty and vindictive that she could be to you, that ended up ended up hurting me, because when I finally went to go challenge her and complain against her, her and my white store manager got codified like immediately, and it was like white solidarity straight from the get. As soon as I walked in, I was real emotional. Also, just emotional about just being a black male in general, and the whole Philando Castile and out in Sterling and just everything in general, because I've been learning more about racism, white supremacy, following Dr. Francis Cresswell-Singh and Neely Fuller Jr. and a lot of other people, and just studying African world history and just getting more aware of racism, white supremacy as a global system. That stress, and then having to come into work and being mistreated on the job, it really made me emotional and less logical, I think. So just one day I just couldn't take it anymore, and I went to go challenge her. And the store manager was just asking me all type of questions, can you prove what she was doing to you? Do you have anything documented? And I didn't, of course, being uncodified. And so just when she came into the room, him and her sort of manipulated me emotionally into thinking that I was the problem, that it was my fault for all of the problems. Like, just a couple of examples of what she would do. She would just leave me with too much work to do with too little time to complete the work, and then yell at me for not being able to complete the work. She one thing that about what Neely Fuller says, that white people are very, very, very aware. She sort of manipulated me before, because she also has a huge workload, and she also doesn't have enough time to complete her work. So she'll always sort of buddy with me and other employees, saying, this job's really unfair, blah blah blah. We really got to do something about it, blah blah blah. And she would suggest like shortcuts and little neat tricks to get the job done quickly. But these shortcuts and these tricks were against workplace policy, and so I would be using these tricks and shortcuts to get the job done faster. But when the higher ups come in for an inspection, they lift up everything and check under the rug. They did a really good detailed inspection of our department. They'll see that, wait, this hasn't been done in a while. Why hasn't it been done in a while? And she'll turn around and yell at me after we had a previous agreement that, yeah, we should take these tricks and shortcuts to get the job done faster and more efficient because we don't have enough time. So she sort of just flipped the script on me and just did a bunch of other things. And when I was bringing all this up in our conversation with the store manager and her, which is her manager too, the store manager over the whole store is also her boss. So just totally swept anything and everything that she did under the rug, and they just sort of manipulated me. And I was really emotional, so I wasn't thinking right, just thinking about all the racial things, and I just really uncodified and just sort of just broke down in a puddle of tears, just crying about everything. And they were like, so what's wrong with you? You've really been changed lately on the job. What's been so wrong with you lately? And that was just me learning more about racism, white supremacy, and just being upset and bringing it up on the job too. And another problem that I had was just being uncodified and speaking with white people about racism. They'll ask me a question about Hillary or Trump, who you voting for, and I'll say, well, I think the Democratic and the Republican Party haven't done anything for black people since our time in this country. And I just going into the information that I was learning, revealing it to both white and non-white people. And so, I also had an uncodified habit of having all this information on my social media, and also being uncodified. I have a lot of colleagues who also are friends on social media, and so I will be saying all kinds of things on what I'm learning about racism, white supremacy, and so pretty much they all know that I'm quote unquote that Negro who talks about race, and I can just tell that I'm treated a little bit differently, and just in general. So pretty much after I had it out with my both managers, there was an investigation on the workplace conduct that was taking place, and they tried to make it seem like I was trying to start a revolt in our department by talking to everyone, because I was encouraging everyone to speak on what she was doing, both to non-white victims of her tyranny and to white victims of her. I don't know if white and victims should be used in the same sentence, but people that she was also mistreating other white people on the job. But those same white people that were being mistreated, that I thought was on my side, ended up throwing me under the bus, throwing me back under the bus as if they weren't complaining about the same thing. So the black people didn't do it, but the other non-black white coworkers did that to me. So just, oh God, totally uncodified and sloppy my behavior. So anyways, and that was a couple of months ago. So just a couple of weeks ago, I asked the store manager how the investigation was going. He said, "Don't ask me about that. You wait until I tell you." And it just like talk to me like I was like a child, like a boy. Like what Fuller says, we're children under the system of white supremacy, and I don't know what to do about asking them, or should I go above his head? Because the person directly above him is a black male. But I also observed that so-called black managers on this job, once they get that manager position, they start to change, and they seem to have the HNIC sort of behavior and start treating other black employees badly. It seems to get further ahead, and just a huge mess. So so there hasn't been any results on that investigation yet. But ever since then, my manager has increased the abuse of me, and we're heading into the holiday season, and it's going to get even worse. So I'm anticipating a lot more problems soon, but she's just been cutting my hours, and we get paid more money on certain days at this job, and she's made sure that I'm off of those days, not working anymore. So just so I've noticed that speaking up hasn't really worked out for me, especially when the people in charge are also white. It's just bad all around, and I'm not really sure what to do. But I do animation on the side, so I have been making a little bit of money to supplement my income on that front. But again, even working for myself, I can't escape racism and white supremacy because other issues dealing with, getting contracts and other things. But in a nutshell, that's my problem. Sorry if I was running on and on and on. I didn't really think about my words before I said them, but I just kind of said them as they come to mind. But yeah, that's my problem.
Thank you for sharing. That touches on so many things that we have brought up. The first thing that I will get when people, I think this is the second time in the last 7 days that HNIC, that term has been used on the program. The most important word in that phrase is nigger. If we are talking about someone who is a nigger under the system of white supremacy, that right there lets you know just about how much power and or what they are really, quote unquote, in charge of, if they are classified as a nigger. And if anybody needs that in the form of a question, or rather, exactly what is a nigger in charge of under the system of white supremacy? And I would just throw that one rhetorically. At any rate, with what you shared, I think almost weekly I talk about not gossiping, and in this context, I mean saying things that you would not say if the person was present. Gossiping on the job is just a bad idea. I've just seen where it tends to produce a lot of other problems, particularly if you're talking about race. Oh man, lots of problems. You just, have to assume that if you're talking to another non-white person or another white person, that they are going to share that information, that it's going to get around, and is probably not going to be in your best interest. I have not seen where people gossiping and talking about other folks on the job, black people doing this. I have not seen where they ended up getting a promotion or a raise or they got a bigger office. I've never seen that happen as a result of doing that talking on the job. And I think you stated repeatedly that a lot of this stuff was happening when you did not have the best codification, did not have a better understanding of racism, white supremacy, and how that is going to be practiced on the job. Policy and procedures, super important. Just stated that a few minutes ago. I state consistently, I think Mr. Fuller has said this, I played some of the audio clips where he's talked about workplace racism and said, as a black person, you do not want to make accusations against a person because immediately all of the pressure shifts to you. Where is the evidence? And if you don't have any evidence, they are going to do a job. It's generally going to be white people are going to form together, and they're going to do a job on you for making a false report. And then if there is any problem, they're just going to blame everything on you, kind of like their revenge for you having the audacity to accuse another white person of, doing something, particularly if you bring up that this could be related to racism, the allegations that you're bringing. Consistently, I think it's very important in terms of us being disciplined, us not being emotional on the job. We're doing Spook Who Sat by the Door right now. I think the main character, Dan Freeman, I think that's a lot of how not being emotional. He has a plan, and he can be talking to other white people that he's working with or his white supervisors, and they can make racist comments about black people in general or him specifically, and he doesn't get emotional. He's not surprised. This is what he expects, and he just sticks to his script. I think we've had a lot of listeners who said just getting accustomed, because I don't think it's the typical thing. I think we're just accustomed to people are saying things that are rude, or if they're being discourteous, or they're saying things that we think are racist, to respond, to call that out. That's, kind of a normal human thing. I think it takes a little bit more planning a little bit more thinking in advance, in particular, where that is not your response, where, number one, I expect whites to be making these kind of racist comments, and then two, I'm not going to respond. They can just say whatever they want to say, and I have my own plan about how I'm going to conduct myself here on the job. I think that's where we want to get to, where we're not allowing our emotions to cause us problems on the workplace, where we respond, and then whatever our emotional response is, it ends up making more problems for us in the workplace. I think we've had a lot of illustrations this week about Voltron, white people working together to thwart black people. I think you even said some of the other white people when you were going around and talking about how this white supervisor, how she was mistreating you all, and then they ended up going back and snitching and telling the other folks. That's what I meant in terms of understanding what it means to be white, understanding racism, white supremacy. These are not your friends. These are not your homies. You just cannot, those are just things that you cannot assume that you can go and talk to them about anything. Personal problems, problems with other people on the job, you just cannot assume. Really, the assumption should be they're going to go and tell everybody in the world that they might even have a recording of this, and they're going to put it on YouTube within 5 seconds of us ending this conversation. That's what's going to happen. That's the way that we should be thinking, so that we can be really, really conscious about what we say on the job. In terms of what to do at this point, I know Mr. Williams, and Mr. Williams even talked about as well, we talked about that exact situation where you said where they load you up, they give you a lot of work, and then do not give you enough time to accomplish all the tasks. This is something that racist behavior that I think a lot of black people have encountered. Mr. Williams even talked extensively and gave some tips on how to deal with that specifically. If you're giving or they're just giving you a lot of things to do and then purposely not giving you enough time to accomplish all of those tasks, he laid out some codification for dealing with that specifically. That's in the archives. In terms of what to do now, it's a little bit tougher because it's kind of like you're already in the situation where a lot of these things have already happened. I know Mr. Williams talks about that as well, where once it gets to this point, it can be a bit more difficult to extract and figure out what to do. It's kind of, at this point, you don't have as many options just because of where things have gotten to at this point. When you were asking, I guess, the white person who's in charge of the investigation, and he said, got rude with you, and don't ask me any questions. We'll tell you when it's done. I may have asked, is that company policy we're not allowed to ask about a timetable for investigations? Is that policy that you're not allowed to ask when it's going to be completed or how the investigation is evolving? But I mean, if he's being that rude and nasty, that might be one that you just want to document what was said and how it was handled. But in this instance, it is a bit rough, particularly if you don't have documentation of things that were done earlier. You can go and begin making notes to the best of your memory about things that have happened, but it's a bit tougher once things have already kind of gotten to a certain point where they're rallying against you to then try to figure out some things to do. Any of the folks that are listening, do you all have any suggestions for things that he might be able to do at this point to improve his situation?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
I think what the caller, what I was listening to, is that he, first of all, I appreciate his honesty on how he identified mistakes that he may have made. I would say the first thing that one has to do is to kind of like pull themselves back into focus, and do and kind of like condition themselves to do more thinking than to be emotionally motivated, because that's like a no-no. Just about not just only in employment, but all 9 areas of activity, to tell you the truth. As far as they're concerned, is that you pull yourself back into focus in what you're dealing with. Expect white people to practice racism in all 9 areas of activity. We just happen to be talking about the employment. And one thing that stands out in my mind that I was just thinking about as I was listening to it because I have that when the retired firefighter was a young firefighter, made some of the same mistakes too. excuse me, to try to out debate a white person on racism. That's a no-no. That's a no-no. I was thinking that, right after that meeting that they had with him, they probably met somewhere at Red Lobster somewhere and had a drink, laughing about the situation together. Because white people are codified. They're codified no matter where they're in South Florida or South Africa. And they don't have to have meetings on it. They can go to that meeting where you are the host and just like totally mistreat you. If you're not prepared to deal with the matters at hand directly. To whereas what's the non-white black male who wrote the pamphlet on the Constitution? You said his name about 1,000 times. Ed Williams.
Mr. Ed.
Mr. Ed Williams. He states if you wait until you get your behind in trouble to read my pamphlet, I'm kind of like just putting my words into it. That's basically what it says. If you wait till you get your behind in trouble to read my pamphlet, you might as well put that thing down. You have to come into a job situation prepared to understand these things that we're talking about, or you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer. And to give yourself the best chance, you have to be prepared, and you have to stay focused. Stay focused on what you're there for. And actually, the correct counter-racist practice has nothing to do with talking about racism on the job. It's how you are able to maneuver through that course of time that you get the maximum amount of pay that you deserve in your position, and at the same time be able to function with white people and non-white people in a manner that you can get through that day. And it has to be a code that we individually develop amongst ourselves. And I mean, I've even had thoughts in mind, just like the quote-unquote non-white black people did about 50 years ago, to practice on how they would practice counter. It was called the Civil Rights Movement, but actually, were non-white people who had an idea of how they were going to practice counter racism, and they actually had like simulated situations where they actually practice amongst somebody else within a setting on what I would say, what I would do, what I won't say, and what I won't do. Some of us who on this program have, are married, quote unquote married, and whatnot, or have some friends that they can basically get with and say, well, let's work on this. Let's work on quote unquote play acting on this situation that I experienced, on how I can do better. And you coach me on it. Then we reverse roles, and I will coach you on it, on what to say, what not to say, what to do, what not to do. That's sort of, and I think from there, some of us individually, things can improve, or we can go in a situation whereas we wouldn't make a lot of mistakes that we normally would make by being out of focus, so to speak. Hopefully, I made sense of what I was saying. Thank you.
Absolutely. Did other folks have commentary, any suggestions for the caller we just heard with their situation, anything that might help them improve things? If not, if you have your own situation you want to touch on, that's acceptable as well. Any other comments?
May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Gus, I just hearing it sound like a very young person. reminds me a lot of myself in the years. Here's what I would say. I learned after having to return home from prison, given the opportunity to get into a different type of work style, I would say if my thing to be codified is I recognize when we're being taught a skill, sometimes the best thing to look for within that training is a niche. I can't say this will work for every industry or every type of job. I mean, but one thing I learned that is when I had that happening to me, training as an electrician, training as a tile setter, I found niche markets within the training. And I would take these things and incorporate them into my own independence to go work for myself. I'm not saying everybody wants to work for themselves, and nor do they desire to, but if they do, I feel as though one of those things we should always be trying to do is learn beyond what's on the surface being taught to us. I will also say this to the global audience listening, that I've lately come to think in the mannerism that has often been historically written. You know, sometimes we hear it as keep your enemies close and all these things like that. I'm not hearing in media and in some of these shows that we turn to. One thing I learned in my endeavors is if you think like the people you're dealing with, oftentimes you'll have the best success. And I think we don't, I think from a moral standpoint, it hurts us to even contemplate thinking on those levels, but I subscribe to the thinking that you have to think like the people you're competing with. And I'll mute my line.
Appreciate that. Other folks that are listening in, if you have either your own workplace situation that you would like to share about, or if you have questions, comments about anything that has been shared thus far, feel free. We are closing in on the end of the broadcast, so don't wait till the last minute if you have commentary. The caller at 6353, did you have commentary you wanted to add?
Yes, hi, Gus. Yeah, I wanted to say that the caller just before me, I want to endorse fully what he said about niche. That's a very critical. That's a very critical observation, and it's something that I totally endorse. I do it myself. Try to master a niche. Doesn't mean you have to, that's all you need to master, but try to get a niche where you just master that. Another, I wanted to endorse what he said also about thinking and in the surrounding and the environment that you're thinking in. You must learn to think like your enemy. It's almost requiring us to wear a mask in some regards, but it's just the reality of learning to maneuver in the system. So I endorse that as well. The other thing is I'd like for the caller to forgive yourself. What you didn't know, you didn't know. And the point at which you now know, you can begin to make changes. The system of racism, white supremacy, terrorism is a fascinating one. So forgive yourself and don't be as hard on yourself as you're being. Just move forward now. I would say keep your resume polished up and begin to document. Not only will documentation possibly help you, but you'll learn about the things that are happening, and you can go back and figure out ways to handle how you handle it, what worked. And I recommend Mr. Fuller's book. It's a masterful book, and you don't have to do everything that it says, but it will teach you some valuable lessons. Thank you, Gus. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Outstanding. We have I know our caller who shared. The caller at 9315. Did you have commentary you want to share?
Yeah. So today I was talking with one of the older white males at my job, and so he was saying that somehow he found a fossilized bone or something, like of giants or something, in somewhere in Ohio. But anyway, he happened to say that where he lived was an Indian reservation, and so we got on the topic of, I guess, his grandfather, not a reservation, but it was, I guess, a place where Indians lived, in the 1700s or 1500s or whatever. Anyway, he said that his grandfather actually was one of the benefactors of, like, I don't know if it was the Homestead Act or the State Right Act or whatever, but he actually got free land. And he was telling me now his uncle owns the land that they have, and he has over, I think, like over 200 acres of land that they pretty much got. I mean, I'm sure, like, which started off of them getting free land. Also, it was another incident, I guess, a black girl, so I work at a car dealership, and, like, women rarely apply, and I guess a black girl who happened to be pretty attractive applied. So I was in, like, the back, like, in, like, a back area where the internet salesmen are, so I was just saying, I was back there doing, some work or whatever, and like, all the salesmen were going crazy. Like, they were like, oh, man, this black girl, we hired this freaking hot black girl, like, and she's super light-skinned, like, super, super light, and they just kept harping on the fact that she was light. But it was 3 males that I heard talking about it. I don't know if they're classified as white or not. One is like so-called Afghanistan, I guess, and then another one is some other type of so-called Middle Eastern, and one of them was so-called Mexican. But I still don't, I don't know if they're classified as white or not, but that's all I had.
Fascinating. I think that situation sounds like something that could end up being on the tacky side as well. Have to pay attention to see how all that goes out. I feel sorry for her because it seems like she could be in a situation where she's going to be mistreated once she gets on the job also. The person at 0950, are you able to speak with us now?
Yes, I am. Greetings, Gus. Okay. Greetings to all the listeners and callers. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, the last couple weeks been pretty rough. I've forgotten all about my workplace experiences and sort of mirrored in on one that a guy told me. Actually, I had called in 2 weeks ago, and I was on hold. And Mel walked up to me. He was like, man, could you believe it? I was like, believe what? Now I'm like, black Mel. He was like, could you believe it? I was like, believe what? He shows me his cell phone. Like, what is this? And it's a picture of a nude. And I was like, when did that happen? He was like, a few weeks ago. And I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. I was like, well, did you report it? He was like, yeah. They told me, now it was made like, I guess a plastic wrap. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with shrink wrap. Someone made it with shrink wrap and left it hanging on a dumpster. So the excuse that the company gave was, oh, maybe it was tied onto a pallet, a wooden pallet that someone threw in, and the wrap was tangled up, and that's the form that it left. So basically, he went back and forth, and he said that he tried to explain like that wasn't a mistake, whatever. And he think that it was deliberate, and they was like, oh, well, it doesn't look that way. But he did say that he showed it to other white females that was in the office, like, what is this? And they were like, oh my God. That's the exact emotion he said they gave, like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And then there's a white Hispanic lady, I guess she's from Spain. She gave the same reaction. But in the midst of this, he also was telling me that he was approached by a white gentleman who cursed at him, told him to get the F off the forklift, and do he know where he is or something like that. And this gentleman, he's pretty athletic. I worked out with him in the gym a few times. He said that immediately he thought two things. He's going to lose his job, and he's going to go to jail. And there's also a cowbell on his behalf because he is married to a white woman. But he believes that that it's mostly men. He always says the man. Whenever he talk about the usual suspect here, he always says the man. I find that pretty interesting. And also an update on my therapy sessions. I know you and Rob said that you guys wanted to know what was going on. You guys probably would find it a little bit fascinating. I'll have to give like full in-depth details on Saturday. But basically, I think it might be a cowbell on her behalf too. She used to have locks. She no longer has locks. She wear a wig. And when I talked about tragic arrangements, it seemed like she got a little offended, and she was like, "Oh, well, the world shouldn't be like that." And she said like something like me opening up the doors for people and trying to just cope with them. And then another thing I noticed that she kept bringing up too is that she kept saying, "Well, I understand your anger, but you don't want to go out and harm anyone." And I was like, in my head, I'm thinking, like, I never talked about harming anyone. Why does she keep, like, reiterating for me not to do anything, like, physically to anyone? She somewhat kind of understands, like, my viewpoints, but then she always try to bring it back to how I should work with these people and try to get along with them, and everyone's not like that. And I guess she just somewhat, to me, I don't know if she really understands my viewpoint or she's pretending just so she could get like a better understanding. But I try to give her, I try to be honest with her, but I don't want to give too much information because it kind of feels like I want to hold back like on certain things that I tell her because I just don't know. Like I can be more upfront with you guys than I can be with her because some of the feedback that she gives, even though we don't agree, it's still good feedback. She gave some strategies like you would give, like walk away, take a couple breaths, count to 10, and then go back to the job and try to reassess the situation. But for the most part, she's basically saying like, try to get along and stuff like that. So I really don't know what's going to happen in the next session. But that was pretty much it.
Wow. We will be looking for the details if you're able to join us for the compensatory call-in Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific with the new situation. I'm not surprised at all. I think we've even had guests on the program who have talked about nooses ending up on their job, and it was the same type of thing. People saying that they, at most, maybe we will schedule some racial sensitivity classes down the road, like at most. Generally just saying that, this was an accident or the person was ignorant, they didn't know what they were doing, or they were not trying to terrorize anyone. It just ended up like this accidentally. They were just playing a little sailing game about making knots, and, it just ended up being formed in that sort of way. That typically tends to be the way that I've seen racists deal with that sort of thing on the job. And that's another one that's worldwide. There have been so many incidents of nooses in the workplace. I have a photo on my Twitter page right now from just a few weeks back where there was a noose hung in the middle of a workstation, and this is worldwide. There was a big incident in Canada not that long ago where a black female employee was targeted, and they had a noose in the workplace situation. So with that sort of thing, I would just want to document immediately. You can make your own decision if you want to immediately go and report, or if you just want to stash that away in your files. One thing that I would say is to take that sort of thing very seriously. That to me, is very much suggesting people that want to purge. They want to commit violence against black people. Not saying that you need to be intimidated on the job, but I would not take that as just a little hee-hee, ha-ha joke. I would take that very seriously, and if you are going to bring it up, I would bring it up seriously. And even having documentation, particularly, that's one of those, if you can have the news and then you have documentation of other incidents of things being said, racist jokes, any sort of non-white people being mistreated, you can really have a strong case to present that this is not an isolated incident, that there is a documented record of racist conduct on the job, and we need to be going to solve this problem. As Mr. Fuller said, there's documentation of subversive activity. This is just another incident in that same vein. But yeah, if folks have other thoughts on that, feel free as well. We have about 10 minutes left, so as we wrap up, if anybody we missed completely, if you have a comment you want to get in before we wrap up, you should do so now. If not, if anybody have comments on the most recent incident that the male caller just shared about the news incident on the job, or anything else that's been shared over the course of the broadcast, let's do so now. Folks satisfied? No thoughts on the news incident or anything else that has come up? Nobody has comments or questions, suggestions for anything they've heard? Folks are satisfied? That's fine too.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I think the advice you gave in regards to the news incident is great. Another thing, I don't know what the conversations are like in the job, but it seems like there is definite potential for you to get even more tacky racist behavior. I would definitely suggest, if you can, record it. I actually ended up getting a very cheap USB disc from Amazon. I think it cost like $12, and you just plug it into to like a USB port on your computer to charge it, and it will continuously record for up to 13 hours straight. Also, it only records when there's voices, so it only will record when people are actually speaking, and you can download the file to your computer, basically convert it from a WAV file, which takes up more space, so you can convert it from a WAV file to an MP3, and you can also, because you would be essentially recording your entire day at work, you can actually cut it to the sections that you want to keep, so that way all of the racist behavior you have documented vocally speaking, so that as you're, documenting these incidences, if you have to present these incidences in defense of yourself or a situation that you've been dealing with, you have, them in their own words saying harmful things or racist things to you. I would say that's something that I do now. I just record my entire day, and that's one good way I think that it might help to protect you. I would say in reference to, at least for now, hopefully you will call, because thank you for calling in with the update in regards to your visits to the mental health practitioner. She seems to be somewhat confused yet fascinated by how you think and function as a person, working towards counter racism. I would just actually ask her, well, how do you actually get along with people who are terrorizing you? And that is just the way that they function. How are you supposed to actually get along with them when their entire premise is white genetic survival, and that is why they're mistreating you on a daily basis, and nothing that you can do is going to change how they feel about their status being melanin deficient beings. So if there's anything that I was asking, if there's anything she can suggest in a hostile environment, because basically, you're going to war every day. You're walking into a battlefield with a bunch of, racist terrorist soldiers that you're surrounded by, and you have to spend, this kind of time in their presence. And like Gus was saying, take those incidences very, very seriously. Even just in a sense of, having to potentially protect yourself, because they could, try something on you. I would suggest there's something called a tactical pen, and it's actually a pen that writes. It's something that CIA agents carry with them everywhere. You can take it just about everywhere because it's a pen, but it's designed basically to, it has a point on it which you can use to break a window if you're trapped in a car in an emergency. But that same thing, the CIA agent that I learned about this from, actually, he discussed the fact that FBI and CIA agents take it everywhere simply because they can take it with them, and it's something you can use to protect yourself in an emergency. And you can drop a 200 to 300-pound man in seconds if you know how to use it properly. And it's called a tactical pen. They have them on Amazon.com, but it's something I think, just in case something happens and you have to defend yourself, at least with something like that, they can't say it's a knife. They can't say it's any other sort of weapon. It's an actual pen, and you can write with it, but it's something you can utilize to protect yourself. God forbid you come into a situation where you have to, practice counter-racist violence just due to the fact that they're threatening essentially your life. When you get something like the noose, regardless of what material it's made out of, you should really be on high alert when you're dealing with situations like that because it can be very dangerous. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you tomorrow, okay? Thank you.
Absolutely. If other folks, anything else folks need to get in before we wrap up? Any final commentary? Everyone satisfied? I'll assume folks are good. We will do workplace racism against every Thursday, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And just again emphasize, this is not the spectator broadcast. If you are in a noisy environment or for whatever reason you have to do some child care activities or whatever else you have going on, you can feel free to email your commentary in untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com. But I think it's always extremely constructive to be able to hear some of the things people are experiencing. Even helpful, I know it's not the most fun thing, but even if you're looking back on errors, I think we had a few folks who dialed in just talking about, hey, this was when I was more confused. This was when I did not have the same level of codification that I have now. All of us are still learning. All of us have made mistakes and got a lot more coming. But at least in the context of workplace racism, I think it's very, very helpful just to hear some of the things and the ways that racists are able to manipulate and abuse us on the job, particularly when we are not codified. That's why I think it's so important just trying to be more disciplined when we are on the job so that we can function in a much more constructive manner and neutralize a lot of those problems. Just us being a bit more disciplined in the workplace, I think can put us in a much better position in how we handle all of this, and I think it will go a long way to help us to not be as stressed and angry about things on the job just when we understand what's happening and we expect these type of things to happen, and we already have an idea about how we're going to respond when these racist acts come up on the job. As I stated, in that vein, tomorrow we will have our second study session on Sam Greenlee's The Spook Who Sat by the Door, which has a lot of workplace racism in it. We are very early in the book. I think we're starting on chapter 5. You can listen to last week's session in the archives. If you want to read on your own, that's great. We are not that far in the book, so you can feel free tune in. It is a great book. Always nice to do a bit of fiction reading as we kick off the autumn equinox. But that'll be tomorrow, Friday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Certainly we'll have the compensatory call-in this Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Pacific. If you have questions, can't find something in the archives, guest suggestions, gripes, complaints, drop an email untiljustice@gmail.com. Address again, untiljustice@gmail.com. We are on Twitter @untiljustice. Thanks to all the folks for participating, writing in. Great exchange of views, and I hope it has been a constructive investment of your Thursday evening. This is listener-supported counter-racist radio. Invest if you think the program is constructive. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. When you hit the blog, you will see the PayPal button in the top right corner. If you are not into PayPal, drop us an email. We will get you a physical mailing address. Huge thanks to all the folks who have invested, supported us almost 8 years. I hope the program has help folks get a better understanding of what white supremacy racism is, how it works, and been a constructive investment of your time and energy. We have, as black people, way too many problems to waste time. If this broadcast is not improving your understanding of racism, helping you solve problems, and add clarity to your existence, then please find something better to do with your time and energy. That's one of the things that we should have the highest respect value for, our use of time. It is limited. That's it. We'll be back in about 24 hours. Thanks again for everyone tuning in. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.